Chapter 752. 5 Stars Divine Array. The stars moved, but a coffin flew over. Mu Hongqin, White Peacock, and the rest's expressions changed. Because the black coffin passed through the light emitted by the 8th mainland. Sumo and Yi Wuhui were shocked. Wild shadow of the demon. Sumo and Yi Wuhui had seen that black coffin before. But they did not expect that the wild shadow of the demon would suddenly appear. Why would it abandon the demon moon world? But if Sumo and Yi Wuhui returned to the demon moon world, they would be shocked. Because that place had become the scattered stars zone. The demon moon world no longer existed. Boom, crack, rumble, that black coffin was almost unstoppable. The cultivators present, including Mu Hongqin, did not have the ability to stop it. Moreover, that black coffin was not going for anyone. Its target was the 3rd star. In a split second, smoke and clouds rose and scattered lights scattered. That black coffin pierced through the 3rd star of the dust net star. That scene was incomparably shocking. Although the demonic boat under Sumo's feet should be able to do that. But Sumo would definitely not use the demonic boat to pierce through a star. If he had one of the 9 coffins, he would be willing to try. Unfortunately, that black coffin was not one of the 9 coffins. Whoosh, boom. In the galaxy, after the black coffin pierced through the 3rd star, it actually turned around. Once again. Hiss. At that moment, Sumo could not help but gasp. The wild shadow of the demon is a madman. Yi Wuhui said. He does not care about any living beings. He does not seem to care about himself either. Boom, crack. That black coffin was extremely fast. Just now, before the tail of light dissipated, it had already formed a second tail of light. In the galaxy, the 2 black lights formed a huge black cross. That cross was like the judgment of the Grim Reaper at the end of the world. That cross could be seen clearly even from tens of thousands of miles away. They were fixed in the void, and did not disperse for a long time. Absolute defense. Retreat. Mu Hongqin's expression changed. At the same time, she raised her hands. In the 3rd layer of Rebirth Realm, red sand filled the sky. That was the first time Sumo had seen Mu Hongqin truly unleash the Dao technique that Hong Yimu Jinghong had used on the windmill back then. The boundless mortal world pervaded the vast universe. At that moment, Mu Hongqin's eyes reddened. Senior Martial Sister Mu. Sumo called out in her heart. Meanwhile, the 8th continent suddenly lit up. Samsara's top defense was instantly activated. At the same time, it rapidly retreated, its formation fully activated. Boom boom, rumble. At the same time, the 3rd Qinluo star exploded. Star explosion. That was the 2nd star in the 7-star realms of the dust realm. Fortunately, it wasn't as big as the dust net 1st star, but it still covered an area of hundreds of thousands of miles. Alas, Su Fengchuan's flagship was directly engulfed by the power of the star explosion. As for Hong Chen's other battleships, only Sima Yunyan's flagship was swept up by Mu Hongqin and tossed to the 8th mainland to avoid destruction. Not a single one was left. There seemed to be no winner in this war. Mu Hongqin's technique blocked a portion of the attack. At that moment, she was covered in red light like a burning phoenix. She was surrounded by red sand. They soared into the sky and were like torches in a whirlwind in the entire universe. The 8th mainland had already retreated 500,000 miles away. Fortunately, the entire continent was unharmed. However, 2 of the 7 stars of the dust net star had already fallen. If another star was destroyed, there would be no possibility of setting up the 5-star divine array. Roar, Jia! Mu Hongqin stood in the galaxy, her eyes even redder. This scene was far beyond her expectations. At that moment, the black coffin had already stopped about 10 miles in front of Mu Hongqin. Its background was the 3rd star that was still exploding hundreds of thousands of miles away, as well as the black cross that had yet to dissipate. Behind Mu Hongqin, the red sand was like the sea, like blood rolling. Who is it? She stared at the coffin, her voice slightly fluctuating. At that moment, White Peacock's eyes narrowed. Creak, the black coffin slowly opened. At that moment, it was as if a mysterious black box had been opened in the universe. There was a demon lying in it. Looking again, a man in black slowly walked out from it. His demeanor was elegant and gentle, but his eyes were filled with a demonic and cold light. In between his brows, there was an extra stroke of Huang. It was a contradictory combination. Xiao Huang. Yi Wuhui was slightly shocked. Because the person who came out was not the young man in black. Apart from the Huang in between his brows, the cultivator in black was exactly the same as Xiao Huang. He is the desolate shadow of the demon. Sumo shook her head and said, I didn't expect that in less than half a month. He was actually reborn again. I really don't know how he did it. The desolate shadow of the demon looked at Mu Hongchen and smiled faintly. You are Mu Hongchen? So, I have seen you before. Xiao Huang? Mu Hongchen looked at the desolate shadow of the demon and frowned. However, an indescribable feeling flashed in her eyes. The desolate shadow of the demon's lips curled. That's right. It seems like the peacock race has never forgotten me. I am Xiao Huang, I am the Avenger, I want to kill the peacock race. At that moment, the killing intent of the desolate shadow of the demon instantly rose. The black coffin disappeared. However, under the feet of the desolate shadow of the demon, a dark shadow appeared. That shadow, unknowingly, was slowly extending. Sumo and Yi Wuhui saw everything clearly. Xiao Huang. Mu Hongchen smiled coldly. After so many years, you are still not dead? If the peacock race is not dead, how would I dare to die? The desolate shadow of the demon said coldly, then he looked at the battleship on the 8th mainland. The demon race wants to set up the 5 stars god array to open the realm gate. Unfortunately, I, Xiao Huang, am here, and I will not let you have your way. Of the 7 stars of dust, 2 have already been destroyed. If one more is destroyed, you will not be able to gather the 5 stars. However, that white peacock is not bad. I want to kill her first. The desolate shadow of the demon stared at the white peacock with a strange smile. Who? At that moment, the desolate shadow of the demon was like a demon. Actually, he himself was not clear sometimes. When he met the peacock race, did he devour Xiao Huang, or did Xiao Huang control him? That kind of hatred was indescribable. That kind of hatred was far more than a promise, it was an instinct. If not for the promise he made to Sumo, he would have killed Mu Hongchen first. Because that was a red peacock. Kill. The desolate shadow of the demon roared. After devouring the demonic moon world, his realm was close to the martial supremacy realm. Everyone present, unless Sumo fought him to the death, no one was his opponent. He was definitely the nightmare of the peacock race. No one expected that he would actually appear at this moment. With a flash of black light, he directly passed by Mu Hongchen. At that moment, Mu Hongchen was slightly stunned. Her boundless secular world could not stop Xiao Huang at all. But why did Xiao Huang not kill her? Her eyes flashed with a hint of complexity once again. Xiao Huang. Xiao Huang. At the same time, a voice echoed in her heart. At that moment, the white peacock and the rest were shocked. Xiao Huang. In that instant, the white peacock directly crushed the talisman that she had been holding in her hand. That talisman was originally meant to prevent anything from happening to Mu Hongchen. But Xiao Huang appeared. This was even more serious than what happened to Mu Hongchen. Puff, and at that moment, the desolate shadow of the demon was already standing in front of her. White Peacock, please remember, my name is Xiao Huang. That handsome face carried a smile. But the shadow sword in his hand directly pierced through the white peacock's immortal heart. Blood splattered. The desolate shadow of the demon was warm and smiling. Chapter 753. Killing with a Smile, Cruel and Demonic. White Peacock stared at Xiao Huang's face. Her eyes were filled with fear. She did not die immediately, because that was the shadow of the demon's usual method of killing. He would not let her die immediately. He was more willing to let the peacock bleed out at the same time, to torture each peacock's soul. At this time, White Peacock's beautiful face slowly turned gray. She gasped for air. Her consciousness world was filled with the cries of peacocks. Those cries were shrill and piercing, like the wailing of evil spirits. Listen, this is Yu Luo's voice. You peacocks forced her to die. The shadow of the demon laughed viciously. At this time, all the surrounding cultivators were imprisoned by his shadow. They could only watch this scene in a daze. Drip, drip, the 4 demon cultivators beside White Peacock were pale. They could almost hear the sound of blood dripping from White Peacock's body. But they could not move. At this moment it was like a nightmare. The shadow under the shadow of the demon's feet was still expanding. Actually, if he wanted to, he could control the entire 8th mainland. Boom, bang, the 4 demons suddenly saw a flash of white light in front of them. Then, countless blue peacocks flew over. Those peacocks were tearing at their bodies, gnawing at their souls. They could feel the pain, but they could not cry out, they could not move. Ha ha ha, ha ha, helplessness and pain, I will share it with you. The shadow of the demon looked up to the sky and laughed. Then, he let go, throwing down White Peacock. At this moment, the originally elegant and refined White Peacock had already become a dried corpse. But her eyes were still there. Inside her pupils there were spider webs of blood. It was filled with her final pain. What kind of hatred is this? Yi Wuhui could not help but shake his head, sighing deeply. Sumo, if it were you, would you do this? Me? Sumo could not help but smile. I might be able to make them beg for death. Yi Wuhui rolled his eyes at Sumo. The shadow of the demon might be your son. Hee hee. Sumo shakes her head. That kind of hatred, if it is not vented out, desolate shadow of the demon will definitely turn into a demon. If he became a demon, he would only kill more. Everything has a cause and effect. You don't have to sympathize with the Peacock clan. Back then, when they forced Yu Luo to death and chased after Xiao Huang, did they ever think that this day would come? After listening to Sumo's words, Yi Wuhui didn't say anything else. Sumo looked at the desolate shadow of the demon with a complicated expression. Who, after killing the White Peacock, the desolate shadow retreated. Bang! The 4 demon clans nearby instantly exploded. At the same time, the desolate shadow of the beasts lightly stomped its feet. That kick didn't seem very powerful, but the power of the 9 layers rebirth realm instantly filled the entire battleship. Ka! The battleship floating above the 8th mainland suddenly exploded. The shattered stars rained down in all directions. At this moment, the desolate shadow of the demon was a godlike existence. No one was his match. Mu Hongchen looked at him and raised his eyebrows. At this moment, her eyes were already blood-red, and her hair was also gradually turning red. Clang! On the demonic ship, Black Feather Shenhong couldn't help but howl at the sky. Shenhong, don't be impatient, Sumo said in a low voice. That's not her. That's just a technique. At this moment, Sumo finally understood what technique Mu Jinghong had used back then. It was a technique of the Peacock Demon clan. The red light shone again, and the red sand rose again. Mu Hongchen's entire body was blood-red, just like when she blocked the power of the star explosion. She was raising her power to the extreme. Her red clothes and hair were like blood. At the same time, there seemed to be a struggling soul in her body. Xiao Huang, Mu Hongchen howled at the sky. It was unknown whether that howl was filled with resentment or unwillingness. The 3 layers rebirth realm. That was Mu Hongchen's strongest battle power. Boundless secular world. Mu Hongchen waved her hands, and the red sand this time was even more violent than before. Actually, that was a power that could completely destroy a star. If that power had been used on the 3rd star, it would have been able to shatter it in half. Rebirth realm, that was definitely not an ordinary existence. If not for the appearance of Desolate Demon's shadow, Mu Hongchen would definitely be able to control the entire situation. At this moment, the battle on the second star had already ended. Hongchen's sect had won. Zheningbu and Wu Chongxing had already completely taken over the second star. But Mu Hongchen had met with trouble. She couldn't set up the 5-star God array. She wanted to fight to the death. But her battle power was completely meaningless in front of Desolate Demon's shadow. Mu Hongchen. Desolate Demon's shadow smiled. I promised the Demon King not to kill you. Otherwise, you would have been like that white peacock. Boundless secular world attacked. Desolate Demon's shadow turned and instantly disappeared. Where did he go? Yi Wuhui couldn't help but ask. He probably went to the 4 stars of Hongchen sect, Sumo said. Mu Hongchen, who was in the void, was a little crazy, but she still reacted quickly. She quickly formed seals. Hu Hua following her spell technique, a gate of light appeared in the air. Stargate. Then, the entire 8th mainland suddenly moved and directly flew into that light gate. That was the teleportation of the entire mainland, and the energy required was extremely strong. In an instant, the entire 8th mainland shrank by a quarter. Because the array consumed the person being teleported. Boom Hua, when the 8th mainland rushed out of the Stargate, it already saw the 4th star of Chen Luo. Hua, the 8th mainland's speed was already very fast. But it was still not as fast as Desolate Demon's shadow. It directly jumped through space. Mu Hongchen watched as Desolate Demon's shadow appeared that coffin again. Then, a black light flashed and went straight to the 4th star. Everything was exactly the same as it was just now. A black cross cut across the starry sky. It was like a cross-shaped longsword that directly destroyed the 4th star of Chen Luo. Another one. Sumo smiled helplessly. This Desolate Demon's shadow doesn't care about the lives on the stars at all. Yi Wuhui frowned. He wants to eliminate all future troubles. Sumo sighed. Because he has no other choice. This place is the closest to the Wisdom Realm. As long as there are 5 stars, they can be used by the demons. And once the realm gate is opened, the Dead Soul's star field will become the demon's territory. Desolate Demon's shadow really doesn't want to see that. But he is also a member of the demons. Yi Wuhui said. But he is a shadow. Sumo's lips curled. A shadow is like a puppet. Desolate Demon's shadow wants to control his own fate, and not become their shadow. But he understands that he can't fight against the entire demon race. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so ruthless. Yi Wuhui sighed and nodded. If there are 5 stars, the array will be completed sooner or later. But how did the 6th star of Chen Luo get destroyed? Desolate Demon's shadow shouldn't be able to destroy stars anymore. Yes. Sumo frowned. I am also thinking about this. Could it be that there is a bigger battle ahead? But there is no need to destroy the stars anymore. At this moment, Desolate Demon's shadow kept the black coffin again, and stood not far away from Mu Hongchen. The 5 stars array will never be possible. Mu Hongchen's laughter was a little strange. At this moment, her face was extremely pale. Suddenly, she hugged her head with both hands. Xiao Huang! Xiao Huang! Mu Hongchen screamed. The red sand around her tumbled endlessly, like the waves of a hurricane. Chi deviation. Sumo's expression changed slightly. Instantly, her demonic boat moved. But, at the same time, a teleportation array appeared in the void. The aura of a venerable instantly filled the sky. Chapter 754. The boundless secular world instantly went out of control. Mu Hongchen's eyes were bloodshot as she roared towards the sky. At that moment, it was as if she had truly gone mad. Xiao Huang! Mu Hongchen roared Xiao Huang's name in a heartbreaking manner. At that moment, even the wild shadow of the demon could not help but frown. There was a voice in his soul that seemed to be telling him that he should help Mu Hongqun. A green light jumped between Mu Hongqun's brows, as if it was about to burst out. Green and red lights alternated on her body, as if she was about to explode. At that moment, Sumo and the wild shadow of the demon moved forward at the same time. However, an endless brilliance suddenly appeared in front of Mu Jinghong. A silver Dharma array appeared in an instant. It was like a silver lake. The waves were rippling and the silver light rose. Looking again, within the silver light, a middle-aged cultivator wearing a black robe and a red shirt appeared. Instantly, a king's aura filled the void. A supremacy was in existence that controlled everything. Peacock King. Yi Wuhui could not help but be stunned. Sumo was also stunned. She really did not expect that the Peacock King had really come to the Dead Soul's star field, and that it was not just a spiritual will, but his real body. Instantly, Sumo's mind moved. Yi Wuhui was immediately kept into her sea of consciousness. Little White Pig and Black Feather Deity also kept their cosmos sack. He was afraid that he would not even have this chance later. Because, as a former supremacy, Sumo was all too clear about the power of a supremacy. Once the Peacock King appeared, he pressed with one hand and lightly patted Mu Hongqun. A streak of supremacy's power directly poured into Mu Hongqun's brows. Looking again, Mu Hongqun immediately calmed down. The scattered red light on her body also gradually retracted. The red sand gathered under her feet once again. Hongke, don't be impatient. The Peacock King looked at Mu Hongqun and smiled faintly, his expression extremely calm. There was definitely a qualitative change from the reincarnation realm to the supremacy realm. It was not a simple stacking of power. In the three realms, even someone as powerful as Bu Miaoyan had been stuck at the peak of the eternal realm for tens of thousands of years. In the end, she had not been able to reach the Paragon realm. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to become a soulless Taoist being, and then become a supreme being. The difficulty of becoming a venerable one was evident. It could be said that every supremacy had experienced countless tribulations. Therefore, any cultivator who could become a venerable was a peerless figure. No matter which race he belonged to, whether it was the human race, the demon race, or any other race, it was all the same. If the Peacock King stood here, then this world would belong to him. Therefore, he was very calm. He already understood everything about the dust Civ 7 stars. However, he was not angry at all. All of these things were trivial to him. He was confident that he could deal with them. Mu Hongqun fell silent. However, she stood behind the Peacock King in a daze. Although he was no longer screaming, it seemed that he had not completely recovered. Sumo and the desolate shadow of the demon stopped several kilometers away. Of course, this distance wasn't much to them. Just now, Sumo and the desolate shadow of the demon wanted to rush in front of Mu Hongqun, but the appearance of the Peacock King seemed to have unknowingly created a boundary. At this moment, the Peacock King didn't purposely release his pressure. However, Sumo and the desolate shadow of the demon could feel that kind of pressure. They looked at each other, but no one said a word. However, at this moment they understood that they were definitely not enemies. Against a venerable, they could only cooperate. Demon King of the Three Realms? The Peacock King looked at Sumo and smiled faintly. Whoosh, Sumo's appearance changed, and he revealed his true body. His white clothes fluttered, and he was as beautiful as a demon. Sumo understood that even if he didn't reveal his true body, the Peacock King would be able to see him clearly. That's right. Sumo smiled faintly and nodded his head. At this moment, if Sumo was just an ordinary rebirth realm cultivator, he might not be able to maintain his composure in front of the Peacock King. It's an honor to meet you. The Peacock King actually cupped his fist. The Sumo in front of him might not be much, but the Peacock King knew the story of the Underworld Lord and the Demon King of the Three Realms. Nice to meet you. Sumo cupped his fists and returned the greeting, and smiled meaningfully. It seemed like the Venerable knew a lot of things. The Peacock King looked at Xiao Huang, and the smile on his face seemed to deepen. Demon Shadow. The Peacock King laughed. It's really you. It's been a long time. Hee. For tens of thousands of years, it was you who had been possessing Xiao Huang's body and slaughtered my Peacock clan. I was entrusted with a task, and I am loyal to it. The desolate shadow of the demon's expression was calm. What a good entrusted with a task, and I am loyal to it. The Peacock King's expression turned slightly cold. You seem to have forgotten your origin? You are the shadow of the spirit clan. I used to be. The desolate shadow of the demon laughed. But I will never be again. I am me. You can call me Xiao Huang or Shadow of the Demon. Sigh. The Peacock King looked at the desolate shadow of the demon, and then let out a long sigh. Shadow, you are right. You will never be the shadow of the spirit clan again. It is not a possibility, it is a certainty. The desolate shadow of the demon said. I am willing to give you one last chance. As long as you agree to follow me back to Wisdom Shrine. My Peacock clan can let bygones be bygones for everything that you have done in the past. The Peacock King said. Ah. The desolate shadow of the demon could not help but laugh. Peacock King, the reason you brought me back to Wisdom Shrine is to disintegrate me, and then obtain the ancient demon techniques on my body. I will no longer be a shadow, I am now a true cultivator. The ancient inheritance of the demon clan can only belong to me. The Peacock King could not help but squint his eyes. The desolate shadow of the demon was actually very important to them, because, on its body, there were at least 9 ancient secret techniques that had been completely lost by the demon clan. Those were at least venerable level techniques, and some were even lotus techniques. Any one of them was an absolute technique. However, the Peacock King knew that the desolate shadow of the demon would not give in. Then, he turned his head and looked at Sumo, Demon King of the 3 realms. Do you also want to get involved in this mess? Sumo shook her head. King, I never get involved in this mess. The Peacock King could not help but be slightly stunned. Because this time, I was originally in the water. Sumo said. When the Peacock King heard this, he could not help but smile and nod. Demon King, this makes sense. You have indeed always been in the water, and you have sunk very deep. So I have to go, Sumo said with a smile. That's right. The Peacock King nodded again. The reincarnators of the 3 realms are people that my spirit clan must kill. The shadow of the demon clan, I cannot let them go. The Peacock King looked around at the surrounding world. I can give up on the Dead Soul Star Field. However, since we have met here, I will not let you go ashore. Today, neither of you can leave. Today, neither of you can leave. As he spoke, the aura of the Peacock King changed. His black robe fluttered in the wind. 5-colored light gradually spread out from his back. The demonic arc beneath Sumo's feet had completely turned into a black cloud. The fog surged. In the mist, white robes fluttered and red flowers floated. Not far away, the shadow under Huang Ying's feet was as calm as the deep sea. Chapter 755. The Peacock King stood there, as still as a mountain. He did not make any seals, nor did he make any complicated movements. He just stood there, and then with a light wave of his hand, he abruptly dispersed the pressure. The 5 lights behind him were like the wings of a peacock. Venerable aura. Sumo had not felt it for a long time. That kind of aura was only in his distant memory. At this moment, if he was not of venerable rebirth, if he was not on the demon boat, he would have been frozen in the air by the Peacock King's aura. Even so, Sumo felt the world was heavy. In front of him, there was only the Peacock King, only the 5 lights. The Peacock King was the sky. That was a kind of divine aura. Yi Wuhui's expression changed in Sumo's sea of consciousness. Dang hum, in an instant, Sumo's mind moved. The yin-yang bell was already summoned, floating above his head. When the bell rang, the sound waves vibrated. Ka. At this moment, Sumo felt the Peacock King's sky shatter. His divine aura became clear. At the same time, he shook his hand, lotus vines circled around him. At the same time, the red flowers under his feet rippled. In an instant, everything within 100 zhang radius was filled with black fog and red flowers. Facing the Peacock King, Sumo's first step was to defend. Lianbua. The Peacock King was shocked. At this moment, Sumo had 3 Lianbua, Demon Boat, Lotus Vines, and Yin-Yang Bell. This was out of the Peacock King's expectation. Because, even though he was a king, he only had 2 Lianbua. The Demon King of the 3 realms was indeed an anomaly. The Peacock King thought of the legends he had heard about the 3 realms and the Milky Way and frowned. Such a person should have been killed earlier. A day late meant an extra threat. Today, fortunately, Sumo was only at the 5th rebirth realm. If he was at the Venerable realm, he would not be his opponent. Looking again, the desolate shadow of the demon did not summon any Lianbua. However, the shadow under his feet was getting thicker and thicker. At the same time, the shadow began to ripple. They gradually formed new shadows in the void. At that moment, the Peacock King's expression changed slightly. Because, in front of the desolate shadow of the demon, there was actually a black peacock, a black qilin, and a black butterfly. That butterfly was extremely huge. It stopped above the peacock and qilin, covering everything. It was like a layer of thick clouds, a world of its own. Dark summoning. The Peacock King looked at the desolate demon eye and said coldly. That was one of the ancient secret techniques that the desolate shadow of the demons possessed. At this moment, he had summoned the shadow bodies of the 3 great monster kings. In the entire Hanya world, only the desolate shadow of the demons could use that Dao technique. Divine Sparrow Light. The 5-colored radiance behind the Peacock King trembled and shot out 5 sword lights. Green, yellow, scarlet, white, and black, the 5 sword lights shot straight towards the desolate demon's shadow. Because, in the eyes of the Peacock King, the desolate shadow of the beasts was the stronger opponent. Humph! The desolate shadow of the beasts sneered. His cultivation level was naturally lower than the Peacock King, but he was at the peak of the rebirth realm. Compared to Sumo, his cultivation level was higher. Most importantly, he knew the techniques of the Peacock King like the back of his hand. This was also the reason why the Peacock King was a bit wary of the desolate shadow of the beast. The moment the Peacock King's 5-colored radiance appeared, the peacock in front of the desolate shadow of the beasts flapped its wings. That shadow looked like a black peacock. Whoosh, whoosh. It opened up its tail in the air and instantly, 5 gray sword lights flew out from its body and met the Peacock King's 5-colored radiance. It was clearly the same Dao technique. Boom, crack, the 2 powers collided and a loud explosion occurred. However, all the sword lights disappeared in an instant. They dissolved into one another. The peak of the rebirth realm was actually on par with the power of a venerable. This was indeed an accident. When Suemo saw this, he could not help but smile. Techniques countered each other. He did not expect such a situation to occur. At the same time, Sumo had a thought. Boom, pa, a lotus vine was pulled out. However, its target was not the Peacock King but the Yin-Yang Bell. Boom, hum, the Yin-Yang Bell rose and the sound waves rushed towards the Peacock King. At this moment, Sumo did not have any hesitation. He knew that he had to use his strongest technique against the Peacock King. Otherwise, he would be destroyed in an instant. Hum, boom, a tangible wave of air appeared in the galaxy. At the same time, a gray fog of dust rose within 1,000 miles. The Peacock King frowned. That bell was a Lianbua. He could tell at a glance, but he did not know the origin of that bell. But why was the sound waves so ear-piercing? Why was the dust so blinding? Roar! The Peacock King's long hair fluttered as he roared to the sky. At that moment, a five-colored peacock appeared on top of his head. It looked mighty and was comparable to a phoenix. Boom! Hua! The sound waves appeared in front of the Peacock King and actually resisted the power of the yin-yang bell. At the same time, the five-colored peacock flapped its wings and the dust dispersed. This was the power of a venerable. He could not be compared to the Qilin Third Prince. At the same time, the Peacock King's hand shook. A multicolored halberd appeared in his hand. Whoosh! The halberd shot out and headed towards the demon's shadow. The pole of the halberd carried a five-colored brilliance. At that moment, the demon's shadow's expression changed slightly. Because it was not a Dao technique, but a divine weapon. Peacock halberd. Lianbua. The demon's shadow recognized that divine weapon. Qilin. Suppress. The demon's shadow shouted coldly. Whoosh! The black Qilin's shadow pounced forward. Boom! However, it was completely different this time. The Qilin shadow could not block the peacock halberd at all and was directly dispersed by the halberd's might. Moreover, the peacock halberd's might did not decrease at all as it stabbed towards the demon's shadow once again. The demon's shadow frowned. The lianbua in the hands of a venerable was an existence that could not be resisted. Chi-chi. The peacock halberd's five-colored brilliance crisscrossed as the sound of air breaking arrived in an instant. The demon's shadow could not block it at all. At this moment, even if the koan butterfly descended, it would be the same. Whoosh! The demon's shadow's mind moved and his black coffin appeared. That was the strongest treasure he had on him. Actually, sometimes Sumo was curious as to why the demon's treasure was also a coffin. However, it was definitely not one of the 9 coffins. That coffin, where did it come from? He had never asked before. That coffin was not bad. However, it could not block the peacock halberd. However, the demon's shadow had no choice. Chi-chi. Boom! The peacock halberd had already pierced into the black coffin, even going a third of it. Black light flashed. The demon's shadow had already erected a black shadow shield in front of him. However, at this moment, the peacock halberd suddenly froze in midair. When he looked again, he saw that its other end was tightly entangled by Sumo's lotus vines. Koan butterfly. Desolate movement. The demon's shadow obviously would not miss this chance. At this moment, he did not save himself. Instead, he activated the koan butterfly above his head and charged towards the Peacock King. Chapter 756. If the Peacock King died, his technique would be destroyed. Although the peacock halberd was a lianbua, it was nothing to worry about. Therefore, the wild shadow of the demons chose to attack the Peacock King. After all, the peacock halberd was entangled by Sumo. This was a moment that could be used. The koan butterfly was the strongest among the Prajna demons. According to legend, the ancestor of the koan butterfly was born together with Izong. Almost no one had seen the true form of the koan butterfly. This was because the current koan butterfly was born with a human body. However, it was called the koan butterfly. Therefore, the Ling race used the butterfly as its true form. The koan simply meant big. As for whether that was its true form, only the koan butterfly itself knew. At this moment, the black butterfly pounced on the Peacock King. At that moment, even though the Peacock King knew that it was only the dark koan butterfly and not the true koan butterfly, he still frowned. The wild shadow of the demons knew most of his techniques like the back of its hand. As long as he used any technique, it would most likely be neutralized by the koan butterfly. Therefore, the Peacock King did not use any technique. He wanted to pull back his peacock halberd, but Sumo's immortal vines were tightly entangled. Whoosh! The dark koan butterfly covered the sky. At that moment, the 8th mainland started to retreat. Could not withstand that kind of power. If it was hit, it would definitely shatter. The dark koan butterfly definitely had the power of a venerable. However, the Peacock King did not move, as if he had no other choice. However, his eyes were extremely calm. He was waiting. In fact, everything happened in an instant. The dark koan butterfly had almost completely descended on his head. At that moment, the Peacock King suddenly moved. A five-colored crown suddenly appeared on his head. The crown was covered with peacock feathers. They were multicolored and extremely beautiful. However, when the crown appeared, the wild shadow of the demon's expression suddenly changed. The Peacock King was carrying this lianbois? The Peacock King's plume. It was the Peacock King's treasure, and it was the symbol of the Peacock King's power. Usually, it was enshrined on the divine mountain and would not be used easily. This time, the Peacock King actually brought it with him. Kill. Boom. The Sparrow King plume suddenly flew up. At that moment, it was like a five-colored spinning disk with a tail of light as it swept through the surrounding hundreds of kilometers. Bang, boom. The dark koan butterfly collapsed upon contact. After all, it was only a shadow summoned by a spell, so it was no match for lianbois. Just like before, the Sparrow King plume feather did not stop and once again charged towards the desolate demon shadow. A ring of five-colored light streaked across the sky. It was like a star. In the hands of the Peacock King, the two lianbois weapons were powerful enough to destroy the entire seven-star world. This time, if he hit the desolate shadow of the demon, it would definitely die. As soon as the desolate demon shadow saw this, it formed a hand seal. The shadow beneath his feet instantly dissipated. They actually broke up into pieces. In fact, that was the origin of the shadow. As long as there was a shadow, he would not die. However, just like how the desolate shadow of the demon knew the Peacock King's technique, the Peacock King also knew the secret of the shadow. The desolate shadow of the demon's weakness was the existence of the shadow. The Peacock King knew this very well, so he had been waiting for a chance to kill the desolate shadow of the demon. Sparrow King plume. Illuminate. The Peacock King's expression was cold as he shouted. Looking again, the Sparrow King plume instantly split into five, each in the sky. Then, it suddenly emitted a blinding white light. At that moment, it was as if five suns had suddenly appeared in the sky. The light illuminated the sky, turning it bright white. Ah! The desolate shadow of the demon screamed. That was because the five powerful white lights were shining at him from different angles. In an instant, all the shadows disappeared in the white light. This was the desolate shadow of the demon's greatest fear. It was the same as taking drastic measures. Before, the reason why he brought the black coffin was because the black coffin could allow him to create shadows at any time. However, at this moment, the black coffin was frozen in the sky by the peacock halberd. Therefore, the desolate shadow of the demon was exposed to the Sparrow King plume. The five Sparrow King plume feathers flew towards the desolate shadow of the demon. Lianbois was a divine weapon, not to mention that the one controlling it was a venerable. Therefore, the desolate shadow of the demon could not resist at all. Sealed realm. At the same time, the Peacock King's heart moved. His pressure directly sealed the entire Chun Luo seven-star world. This meant that neither Sumo nor the desolate shadow of the demon could escape. Boom! The first Sparrow King plume hit the desolate shadow of the demon. With just this, the desolate shadow of the demon's Xiao Huang's physical body was completely destroyed, turning into a bloody mist. It was like a knife cutting through tofu. A black shadow escaped from the bloody mist. However, under the illumination of the strong light, it became indistinct and transparent. In an instant, the second Sparrow King plume arrived. The desolate shadow of the demon knew that everything was over. However, at this moment, the desolate shadow of the demon discovered that a black hole had appeared in the sky. It was deep and bottomless, dark and hard to see. What was that? He hesitated for a moment. Lianbois. At this moment, the Peacock King could not help but suck in a breath of cold air, because he saw that it was something that Sumo had taken out. This was Sumo's fourth lianbois. It was actually a tattered bag. However, His 5 Sparrow King plumes froze in midair the moment the ragged sack appeared. Buzz, buzz, not only did they stop in the air, but they were also about to be absorbed by the bag. An endless suction force came from the bag. The mouth of the bag was like a bottomless black hole. However, the Sparrow King plume was after all Lianhua, and it was under the Peacock King's control. Therefore, it only stopped in the air and shook slightly. In an instant the 5 lights merged into one. The Sparrow King plume returned to the Peacock King's hand. It seemed impossible for the Cosmos sack to absorb the Venerable's Lianhua. It could only play a supporting role. However, Sumo's goal was to save the desolate shadow of the demon, not to steal the treasure. "Go in!" Sumo shouted. The desolate shadow of the demon understood and flew into the Cosmos sack with a thought. That way it could not die. And at this moment the Peacock King grabbed with one hand. Bang! The peacock halberd shook, got rid of the lotus vines and stabbed at Sumo. With a single thought, Sumo stored the black coffin in his Cosmos sack. At the same time, the yin-yang bell was placed in front of him. Clang, buzz. The peacock halberd hit the yin-yang bell. Lightning shot in all directions, the sound waves were like the wind. Sumo hurriedly used demonic energy and red flowers to protect himself, and the Peacock King went up to meet it. That was the difference. The Peacock King ignored the attacks. The desolate shadow of the demon had been taken. The Peacock King had one less enemy. If he wanted to kill Sumo, it would be as easy as flipping his hand. Suppress. The Peacock King made a seal with one hand, and a pure Venerable's power turned into a giant axe that chopped at Sumo. Boom, hua! The demonic energy and red flowers were split apart by that power. Huh! Sumo's expression changed. The demonic energy under his feet turned into a demonic boat. Then, with a single thought, he retreated. If the opponent was someone else, Sumo would have escaped. But as soon as the boat moved, the Peacock King followed it like a shadow, even faster. At that moment, even if Sumo wanted to use the magical steps to escape, it was impossible. Sumo was a bit too confident. He didn't expect that even with so many Lianhua, he still couldn't fight a real Venerable. The Peacock King sneered. At the same time, his 5 fingers turned into claws and reached for Sumo's head. The 5 fingers were awe-inspiring like divine hooks. At that moment, Sumo couldn't escape or block it. He was imprisoned by the Venerable's power. Sumo, Yiwuhui wanted to rush out of his sea of consciousness. However, Sumo had already sealed his sea of knowledge. He knew that Yiwuhui would die if he came out. Farewell, Demon King. The Peacock King sneered. At that moment, Sumo knew it was over. There were many things he hadn't finished yet, and there were many people he wanted to see again, but there was no chance. Even if they were unwilling, who could live a life without regrets? Sumo couldn't escape death. There was no longer any meaning to this reincarnation. It was like a dream. Sumo closed his eyes. Ha ha ha! At this moment, he heard a burst of laughter. Uncle, you're really too lousy. Chapter 757. Boom. Immediately, Sumo heard a loud noise. He opened his eyes and saw that the Peacock King was already thousands of feet away. The Peacock King's face was uncertain. Uncle, you are so lousy. A little girl in purple clothes stood beside Sumo and repeated what she just said. Wang Shui. Sumo looked at Wang Shui with a complicated expression. In his previous life, there was only one person who always said he was lousy, and that person was Wang Shui. Moreover, Sumo couldn't refute. The forbidden map was lousy and the technique was lousy. Just now, if Wang Shui didn't appear in time, Sumo would have died under the fingers of the Peacock King. Thank you, Sumo said solemnly and then let out a long sigh. You're welcome. Wang Shui waved her hand generously and then looked at Sumo and said, However, uncle, your real body is really handsome and full of vigor. Wang Shui looked at Sumo like an idiot, and her eyes were full of stars. Probably the last time, the time was too short and she didn't see enough. At this time, Yi Wuhui, who had just recovered in the sea of consciousness, was speechless. She even suspected that Wang Shui saved Sumo because Sumo was handsome. Sumo was also speechless. "Who are you?" The Peacock King stood in the distance and shouted. At this time, the Peacock King's plume floated above his head, and he held the peacock halberd in his hand. His face was extremely gloomy. Just now, he could have killed Sumo immediately. He even felt Sumo's unwillingness to die, but an inexplicable force appeared. In an instant, his force was shaken and he was sent thousands of feet away. To be honest, he didn't understand what was going on just now. My name is Wang Shui." Wang Shui turned around and looked at the Peacock King with a smile. "You dare to bully my uncle? You're really bold. However, there is still space in my back garden. I don't mind catching a peacock to raise." "What?" The Peacock King raised his eyebrows. Although he was a venerable one and had great self-restraint, he could not help but feel angry at this moment. 4 tens of thousands of years, who dared to speak to the Peacock King like this? What's more, she was just a little girl. They wanted to keep the Peacock King in captivity. Most cultivators wouldn't even dare to dream about it, let alone say it out loud. The Peacock King narrowed his eyes. Wang Shui? He had never heard of this name before. However, at this moment, he was a little uncertain, because he was actually unable to see through the violet-clothed young woman's cultivation. In theory, even if the other party was a Lotus scholar, he would still be able to tell a thing or two. However, there was not the slightest bit of spiritual power emanating from the girl's body. She stood there like a little mortal girl. That was too unusual. "Uncle." Wang Shui looked back at Sumo and said, "That red peacock, do you want it?" "Yes." Sumo nodded. "I want to ask her something." "All right." "I caught her. Do you want that old peacock?" Wang Shui nodded and asked. "I don't want it." Sumo smiled bitterly. "If you can kill it, you can kill it." "Kill it?" Wang Shui's expression was a little distressed. "But, uncle, no matter if it's steamed or braised peacocks, I don't like to eat them." Sumo was speechless. Yi Wuhui, who was in the sea of soul sense, almost burst out laughing. "Sister, don't laugh. I really don't like it." Wang Shui looked at Sumo's eyebrows and said seriously, "However, I like to eat roasted chicken. If this peacock is killed, it will only be fed to my aunt." Wang Shui smiled happily. However, at this moment the Peacock King was angry. How could he not bear it? The peacock halberd in his hand shook. That halberd was like a 5-colored divine dragon. It crossed the void and went straight to Wang Shui and Sumo. At the same time, the Peacock King plume was also taken out. 10,000 rays of light shrouded the two. After all, the Peacock King was a venerable one. Although he was furious, he still maintained his rationality. 2 pieces of lianbua came out at the same time. Both were extremely long-range attacks. In this way, he could advance or retreat. Just now, he was pushed back by Wang Shui. It shouldn't be a coincidence. Therefore, he was probing. "Uncle, let me borrow your magic weapon," Wang Shui called out. Looking again, she raised one hand, and Sumo's lotus vine was already in her hand. With the lotus vine in her hand, Wang Shui frowned slightly. Crack! The lotus vine in Wang Shui's hand was like a long whip that directly lashed at the peacock halberd. At the same time, Wang Shui waved her other hand. The yin-yang bell was directly held up in the air. Then, it suddenly smashed at the Peacock King plume. At that moment, it gave people the feeling that since it wasn't mine, it didn't matter if it was smashed. Of course, that was just an illusion. 4 pieces of lianbua. They wouldn't be easily damaged, but they could definitely distinguish the winner. Boom! The power of the lotus vine in Wang Shui's hand was definitely not what Sumo could compare with. In just one move, she had sent the Peacock King's halberd flying. Moreover, not only was it sent flying, the halberd was actually heading towards the 8th mainland. One piece of lienbois was enough to destroy the 8th mainland. Clang, hum, at the same time, the yin-yang bell hit the Peacock King plume. Almost the same result, the Peacock King plume was sent flying. However, the yin-yang bell glowed with black and white light. That light was mixed with sound waves, layer by layer. The Peacock King's heart moved, and he was about to retrieve the 2 pieces of lienbois. However, the 2 magic weapons didn't immediately return, and still headed straight for the 8th mainland. The Peacock King's expression suddenly changed. This Wang Shui's power was beyond his imagination. The Peacock King could only quickly retreat. Then, he suddenly grabbed the peacock halberd. The power of the halberd actually forcibly brought him hundreds of feet away. At the same time, the 5 rays of light behind the Peacock King flashed. Withdraw! The Peacock King silently chanted a spell before retrieving the Peacock King plume. However, the black and white light of the yin-yang bell swept straight over. The Peacock King could feel the power of life and death contained in that black and white light. He absolutely didn't dare to get involved. That bell could determine life and death. Whoosh, clouds formed under his feet, and the 5 rays scattered. Howl! The Peacock King actually revealed his true form. It was a 5-colored peacock, hundreds of feet tall, standing in the starry sky, extremely handsome. Wang Shui actually forced the Peacock King to reveal his true form with one move. She might be a Lotus Knight, Yi Wuhui said. Sumo nodded. Wang Shui was indeed unfathomable. Whoosh, Wang Shui's hand shook, and the lotus vine once again wrapped around the 5-colored peacock. Howl! That peacock flapped its wings and actually went straight for Wang Shui. It opened its mouth, seemingly wanting to swallow Wang Shui. Humph! Wang Shui sneered. The lotus vine missed, but it curled its front end, and actually wrapped around Mu Hongqian. In front of Wang Shui, Mu Hongqian had no ability to resist at all. Uncle, keep your beauty well. Wang Shui smiled. Sumo reached out and held Mu Hongqian in her arms, but she was already unconscious. Then, Wang Shui's expression turned cold, and then she raised her hand at the flying peacock. In her palm, a seal actually appeared directly. Evil creature! Suppress! A ray of mysterious light. That seal flew out, and it was an extremely ancient language, but Sumo didn't recognize it. However, he seemed to have seen that kind of seal somewhere before. It was just that he couldn't recall it at the moment. Howl, when the big peacock saw it, its eyes were full of fear. In the void, it wanted to turn its body, but it was already too late. Boom! That seal hit right between its eyebrows. Chapter 758. Roar! The 5-colored peacock looked up to the sky and screamed. Wang Shui's talisman was already nailed between its eyebrows. In an instant, the talisman shone brightly and pierced through the peacock's head. The 5-colored peacock's screams resounded throughout the galaxy. It flapped its wings and stirred up a hurricane. The entire galaxy seemed to be twisting and shattering. The 5-colored peacock struggled desperately, but the light in between its eyebrows did not dissipate. Instead, it turned into a net of light that trapped it inside. That scene shocked Sumo and Yi Wuhui. Wang Shui only used a talisman to trap a supremacy. Even Sumo was shocked by this scene. Even Sumo felt that she might not have been able to do this when she was at her peak. A lord of the sealed realm. What did that mean? Wang Shui's realm was higher than he expected. At the same time, the cultivators on the 8th mainland had also escaped death. In fact, many of them had been watching the battle earlier. Although the battle in space was completely beyond their understanding, they could still see some clues. They knew that it would be an unprecedented battle. Every single magical technique and magical treasure could destroy the entire 8th continent. They were ants. There were many monsters on the 8th mainland. The appearance of the Peacock King had made them cheer and their blood boil. Because, to them, when a king appeared, what would not surrender? They were the pioneers of the monster race. However, the scene in front of them now was like a nightmare. The Peacock King's true body was suppressed by the purple-dressed girl's talisman and could not break free. The purple-dressed young man seemed to have subdued the Peacock King without much effort. Its screams were endless. "A big bird wants to resist?" Wang Shui sneered. Then, her eyes narrowed slightly. Purple blood demon eyes. That was a monstrous talent. In the entire Yizong world, there were very few of them. Wang Shui's eyes directly shot out two faint purple splendors. The purple rays hit the five-colored peacock's eyes. Wang Shui looked at the peacock and said coldly, "Those who obey me live, those who oppose me die." At that moment, Wang Shui seemed to have changed into another person. When Sumo and Yi Wuhui heard this, their hearts couldn't help but tremble. That was a power that penetrated straight to the bone and soul. Roar! Inside the five-colored peacock was Wang Zun's divine soul. Just now, he struggled with all his might in an attempt to escape. However, he instantly saw two rays of purple light. Bang! The Peacock King felt as if his sea of consciousness was being shaken by lightning. At the same time, countless purple flames soared in his sea of consciousness. What was burning seemed to be his divine sense, causing him incomparable pain. However, the Peacock King had his own pride. The supreme leader of a clan. Even if he were to die, he would not choose to submit. Hee. Wang Shui smiled. In fact, she had thought of this possibility. It was because a person who submitted would definitely not become a supreme being back then. "Peacock, I've given you a chance. Then don't blame me for being heartless," Wang Shui said calmly. Her eyes were like a demon. Soul extermination. Forgotten dust. It was a Dao technique that used the purple blood demon eye as a medium. It could directly destroy a cultivator's soul. Hiss, Aolo, looking again, the five-colored peacock's body shook, then it looked up to the sky and hissed. It was like a whale before death. At the same time, the 5 rays of divine light on its body instantly extinguished. That pair of eyes lost their light for a moment. Whoosh, however, a moment later, the 5-colored divine light on its body rose again, as if it was reborn. However, its eyes had turned into a light purple color. That was the same color as Wang Shui's eyes. YOLO, the 5-colored peacock's hissing was finally no longer ear-piercing, then it slowly lowered its noble head. It seemed to be a lot more docile. If you knew this would happen, you wouldn't have done it in the first place. The purple light in Wang Shui's eyes dissipated, and the corner of her mouth curved. What happened? Yi Wuhui asked Sumo. It seems that Wang Shui used a technique to destroy the Peacock King's divine soul. Sumo frowned. Soul extermination, form not destroyed? Yi Wuhui could not help but gasp. Look at those 5 rays of light, its technique is still there. Doesn't that mean it became a peacock puppet? Yes. Sumo nodded. Wang Shui should have erased all the Peacock King's memories, but its realm is still there. That's right. Wang Shui could actually hear the conversation between them. I erased all its memories. Now, this peacock is no longer a king. However, I think it is still considered mighty and majestic, so it will be my mount in the future. King's mount? Sumo looked at Wang Shui and did not know what to say. He just felt that the mounts of the people he knew seemed to be weak compared to Wang Shui's mount. After all, that was the real Peacock King. Even AMU's desolate soul beast and oceanic white dragon could not be compared to it. King's mount? His. Sumo thought about it. That was the feeling when he turned Xiantian and the stars into a phoenix and then roamed the universe. He felt uncomfortable just thinking about it. That was impossible, but Wang Shui did it. Its meat must not be delicious. Otherwise, it's not impossible to kill it. Wang Shui saw Sumo's changing expression. She seemed to be afraid that Sumo would not be satisfied, so she explained. Actually, in the future, you can also change to Kirin or Kuan butterfly as a mount. Let's make do with it first. As long as you are happy. Sumo smiled helplessly. At that moment, he just thought, as long as you don't turn me into a mount. As long as uncle is happy, I am happy. Wang Shui looked at Sumo with a smile. This was like a different person from when she subdued the Peacock King. Uncle, you are so handsome. Wang Shui's eyes were bright as if they could speak. Cough, cough. Sumo coughed twice. Then, with a move of his mind, he turned into Sumo's appearance. AI. When Wang Shui saw it, she couldn't help but sigh. Uncle, what are you afraid of? I won't bother you. Look at how scared you are. The Demon King of the Three Realms, are you afraid of a little girl like me? Forget it. Wang Shui waved her hand, then waved at the peacock. The peacock halberd and the peacock king plume were both in Wang Shui's hands. These two treasures are for you. Wang Shui didn't even look at Sumo. She said impatiently, this is my compensation for taking 2 of your items last time. When Sumo saw it, she didn't stand on ceremony and directly kept it in her cosmos bag. Those were 2 pieces of lianbois. Look at the beauty in your arms. Wang Shui pouted. Now, Sumo's appearance was really too ordinary. Wang Shui basically couldn't lift her spirits anymore. Sumo nodded. Then, he formed a seal with both hands, and a stream of spiritual energy directly entered between Mu Hongqin's eyebrows. Just now, Mu Hongqin fainted. Sumo's spiritual energy was enough to wake her up. However, everything that happened next was absolutely out of Sumo's expectations. Mu Hongqin suddenly opened her eyes and then opened her mouth. Puff! A stream of red light actually shot out from her mouth and went straight to between Sumo's eyebrows. This was to kill Sumo. Uncle, be careful! Wang Shui shouted. Crack! Her left eye directly shot out a stream of purple light. That stream of red light shattered with a sound. It was actually a sword made of red sand. Kakik! Mu Hongqin instantly bled from her 7 orifices, but she said in a cold tone, Demon King, if you kill me, she will be with me. Looking again, a stream of red light directly flew out from Mu Hongqin's body. That seemed to be a stream of soul light. Wang Shui was just about to focus her gaze. However, Sumo immediately shouted, Let her go! Instantly, that stream of red light disappeared, and that body actually instantly turned into red sand, dissipating with the wind. Uncle? Wang Shui didn't understand. I can catch her. I know, but I will still meet her. Sumo said sadly, Let her go first. I don't want to take the risk. Wang Shui was stunned. However, suddenly, her expression changed. She turned her head and looked at Chen Luo's 6th star. Uncle, take care. I'm leaving. Wang Shui's expression actually became flustered. If you have any difficulties that you can't solve, just crush the token that I gave you. Then, without another word, she leapt onto the peacock and disappeared in an instant. This? Sumo was confused. Wang Shui was too anxious. Originally, he still wanted to ask Wang Shui about some things in detail. However, that girl came and went without a trace. She was like a dragon's head and tail. Hum me hum. Suddenly, a familiar sound rang from the starry sky. At this time, Sumo's expression also changed. Looking again, Chun Luo's 6th star suddenly lit up with 5-colored brilliance. That star was actually burning. Chapter 759. The 6th star? What's going on? Yiwu Hui was surprised. At that moment, the star illuminated the starry sky like a fireball. However, no matter which battle it was, it did not activate the 6th star. The Red Dust sect had mobilized the entire sect to attack Yuqi. Almost all the battleships and cultivators that could be deployed were mobilized. Now, the strength of the Red Dust sect was nothing more than some low-level cultivators and servants. It was difficult for those people to leave the Red Dust sect, let alone cause the entire 6th star to burn. But why did Wang Shui leave in a hurry just now? Whoosh! At that moment, The eighth mainland in the distance suddenly activated and made a spatial jump. Actually, the cultivators on the eighth mainland did not feel any danger. They were only afraid of Sumo. After all, the eighth mainland was the territory of the demons. However, Sumo did not stop them. Sumo did not want to care about anything here. Now, the Peacock King had been subdued and Mu Hongchen had disappeared. He did not want to care about anything else. To avenge Xiao Huang, he would naturally return to the Hanya realm. But now was not the time. He had to go to the divine Peacock Mountain in the Hanya realm. As for the tiny eighth mainland, let it be. Ma and me, the voice from before echoed again. This time, Sumo heard it clearly. The immeasurable ship, Sumo said in her heart. That was indeed the voice from the immeasurable ship. Yi Wuhui was also excited. At that moment, in the outer space of the sixth star, an ancient ship gradually appeared. The ship was purplish-brown, thousands of feet long and hundreds of feet tall. There were masts and sails on the ship, but the sails did not move. The entire ship quietly floated in space like a small city. It was ancient and colorful, and it looked endless. It really is the immeasurable ship. Yi Wuhui was very excited. Sumo, we can go back. Suemo nodded and smiled bitterly. However, we can only give it a try. After all, we can't control it. Maybe it will bring us there. That's still better than being trapped in this space-time. Yi Wuhui laughed. And Sumo nodded, and then a thought flashed through her mind. The demonic boat moved forward, and they headed straight for the immeasurable ship. At this moment they still did not understand. Actually, the appearance of the immeasurable ship was inevitable. This was because 3 of the DustNet 7-star world stars had already exploded, and the immeasurable ship was the existence that was most able to sense the power of this star explosion in the vast universe. It was as if a crow could smell the scent of death. The 3 starbursts directly attracted the immeasurable ship. The immeasurable ship would randomly devour the nearest star. The 6th star was about to be devoured by the immeasurable ship. Before it had appeared, its power to pierce through space and time had already caused the 6th star to spontaneously combust. Boom, boom. At this moment, the 6th star had already begun to explode, but it did not pose a threat to the surrounding space. This was because a bridge of energy that was several hundred kilometers long had been formed between the immeasurable ship and the 6th star. It was absorbing the power of the entire 6th planet. That scene was exactly the same as when Sumo and Yi Wuhui saw the immeasurable ship. At this moment, the red dust sect cultivators that had not yet died were all horrified. Previously, they had estimated that the immeasurable ship would only appear after 3,000 or 4,000 years, but they did not expect that it would appear again so quickly. The war between the 2 sects had already consumed millions of years of their foundation. The 6th star had also been devoured. This battle was equivalent to the destruction of the DustNet world. The red dust sect cultivators had extremely complex feelings. The DustNet 7-star world's fear of the immeasurable ship was far greater than anything else. On the 2nd star of the DustNet world, Zheningbu looked at everything with a sad expression. At this moment, his mood was indescribable. Although many cultivators had perished, he had become the cultivator with the highest realm in the DustNet 7-star world. However, at this moment, he did not feel any joy. In front of the immeasurable ship, all lives, all struggles, seemed to be meaningless. They were too small. How could they resist the immeasurable ship? Whoosh! At this moment, Sumo had already arrived on the other side of the immeasurable ship. On the demonic boat, Sumo looked around and shook her head with a sigh. The 6th star of the DustNet world had actually been destroyed like this. And to her, this journey of time and space was about to end. Although there were still some things that had not been resolved, there was no point in continuing here. Sumo, let's go, Yi Wuhui said. Okay. Sumo's heart moved, and she boarded the immeasurable ship. This was because the immeasurable ship seemed to always be open to Sumo. They were not obstructed at all. Whoosh! They landed on the deck, and everything in front of them was exactly the same as when they first boarded the ship. The entire ancient ship was still empty, and there was still no life. With the experience from the first time, they went directly to the damaged area and then to the super console below. Through the super control platform star screen, they could see everything outside. At this moment, the sixth star of the DustNet world had completely exploded. However, under the immeasurable ship's devouring, it had already become less than a third of its original size. Energy was continuously being transferred to the immeasurable ship. However, Sumo and Yi Wuhui did not feel that there were too many changes on the immeasurable ship. They only saw the runes on the ship, which were shining and seemed to be accumulating energy. And on the round platform in the middle of the cabin, there were 16 words floating: infinite realms, 10,000 hidden paths. In the lotus of life and death, where is the path? This was a process of ability replenishment. Sumo looked at everything silently. However, she suddenly thought of something, and her figure couldn't help but move, and she went straight to a cave in the cabin. "What's wrong, Sumo?" Yi Wuhui asked. "I want to see a kind of rune," Sumo said. At this time, they had already arrived at the entrance of a cave. As soon as Sumo looked up, she saw the rune on the entrance of the cave. "Look," Sumo said. Yi Wuhui naturally saw everything through Sumo's eyes. "Is this rune special?" Yi Wuhui also did not recognize it. "If I remember correctly, this rune is the last rune that Wang Shui used to seal the Supreme Peacock King." Sumo said, "That was the Supreme Seal. Could it be that Wang Shui has been on the immeasurable ship?" Yi Wuhui said. "Hee." Sumo shook her head. "I don't know. However, just now, she must have felt that the immeasurable ship was coming, so she ran away in advance. It seems that she is a little afraid of the immeasurable ship. This immeasurable ship is extremely mysterious. It has a total of 3,000 cabins. The runes in each cabin seem to be different. Perhaps 3,000 cultivators once lived here." Sumo said. 3,000 cultivators. Yi Wuhui smiled bitterly. Could it be 3,000 Lotus warriors? Amu and Xinyan are just two of them. You have to know that those who can get on the immeasurable ship are probably not ordinary people. But, when I look at the 3,000 cave dwellings, why do they look like prison cells? Sumo said. Yi Wuhui couldn't help but be stunned. This was because Sumo's words were meaningful. Chapter 760. The Dust Sift 7 stars eventually became the Dust Sift 3 stars. The smoke of battle gradually dissipated. However, when would the smoke in people's hearts dissipate? The entire star region became even more empty and desolate. However, this was the evolution of vast universe. Every life had its own life and death. Cultivators were like this, and so were star regions. The 3-star cultivators watched the immeasurable ship jump away, and finally let out a long sigh. No matter what, it meant the safety of the other stars. They were truly afraid that the immeasurable ship would continue to devour. At this time, Sumo and Yi Wuhui were rapidly traveling through vast universe on the immeasurable ship. They stood in front of the star screen and looked at everything in a daze. Little White Pig and Black Wing Godhong were lying by their feet. In the beginning, they could still distinguish some stars and star regions on the star screen. However, they couldn't see anything at all. Sumo understood that the immeasurable ship didn't just travel through space, it also traveled through time. "Sumo, do you think we'll be sent to another time and space instead of the previous one?" Yi Wuhui suddenly asked with a smile. "I don't know," Sumo said. "Haha. If that's the case, it's not bad." Yi Wuhui turned and smiled at Sumo. "If that's the case, only we will accompany you in the future." "Humph," Little White Pig echoed. "Why are you snorting?" Sumo glared at Little White Pig. "If the immeasurable ship can't return to our time and space, I can't return to my soul storage altar. If you want to eat immortal fruits in the future, You can only lick my toes. Humph. The little white pig thought that Sumo's words were very reasonable. It subconsciously licked its toes and couldn't help but frown. The difference in taste was simply too great. Ha! Yiwuhui saw this and hurriedly picked up Little White Pig with a smile. It's okay. Perhaps we'll arrive in a new world where there are immortal fruits everywhere? Humph humph. The little white pig nodded adorably as his eyes lit up. In your dreams. Sumo looked at the little white pig and did not say anything else. Yiwuhui smiled knowingly. However, her heart was sour. She understood that Sumo would not be willing to stay in a strange world with her even if she did not have the great ambition of restoring the galaxy. In fact, Sumo was quite confident about returning to the past. This was because on the immeasurable ship, he had always used his divine sense to communicate with the immeasurable ship. Although there was no response from the immeasurable ship, Sumo observed that the star domain they had just passed was very similar to when they had first arrived. There was a high probability that the immeasurable ship would bring them back. After all, this was a spiritual ship. Suddenly, the entire screen of stars fell into darkness. It was time to jump through space. Sumo and Yiwuhui couldn't help but look at each other. They had gone through this process before. Whoosh! A moment later, the world in front of them suddenly became clear. The dust net 3 stars. Sumo saw 3 stars in the distance through the screen of stars. Although they were still very far away. However, those were the remaining dust net 3 stars. However, they looked slightly different from before. We're back, Sumo said. At the same time, the immeasurable ship seemed to have stopped in this world and did not continue sailing. It seemed that Sumo's divine sense communication was effective. Let's go. Sumo directly took Yiwuhui, the little white pig, and the black feather god Hong back. Then, he went on the deck. The star map in his mind flashed slightly. Sumo confirmed again that the distant place was undoubtedly the real dust net 3 stars. Sumo flew directly off the immeasurable ship. Then, he bowed deeply to the immeasurable ship. Thank you. Boom! The immeasurable ship buzzed as if it was responding, and then disappeared in an instant. You're right, the Lotus boat really has a spirit, Sumo said to Yiwuhui. Ha ha! Yiwuhui said with some disappointment. Of course. It's good that you're back. At this time, they were still some distance away from the dust net 3 stars. So, Sumo summoned the magic ship again, and went all the way north. That feeling was very strange, because it seemed that they had left this place less than 2 hours ago. However, when they came back here, the aura should be completely different. Along the way, they felt that the Dead Souls star field was even more desolate and dead. In fact, they should have passed this part of the star path when they went to the Demon Moon world. At that time, they could occasionally see a few stars. But now, they did not even see a single star. There were only the occasional floating continent in the starry sky. However, there was no life on it. It was completely barren. Sumo, I don't know how many tens of thousands of years ago we went to that time and space. Now, it seems that it's definitely not a short time. Yes. Sumo nodded. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so desolate. I wonder how many times the immeasurable ship has been here. This place is basically empty. I wonder what the dust net 3 stars look like now? Sumo was the only one sitting on the magic ship. Because the current situation was not very clear, Sumo did not let Yiwuhui come out. The magic ship flew at high speed, but Sumo did not let it do a space jump. After all, after the previous battle, Sumo also needed to adjust and rest. Therefore, they flew in the starry sky for a full 3 days. 3 days later, the dust net 3 stars were in front of them. The first thing that came into view was the 8th mainland. Therefore, Sumo put away the magic ship and found a remote place to land. Now, this mainland was much smaller than the 8th mainland. Originally, the war had shrunk it by 1/3. Now, it seemed to be only half of its original size. Perhaps something had happened later. However, even so, this continent was not small. Windy Rain City. Relying on her memory, Sumo arrived at Windy Rain City in no time. However, as soon as she entered the city, she could not help but frown. Windy Rain City used to be extremely prosperous, with countless cultivators. Now, however, it looked very ancient. This kind of antiquity was not only due to the vicissitudes of time, but also the absence of prosperity. There were not many cultivators on the streets of Windy Rain City. Even though there were some, their cultivation bases were very low. The cultivator with the highest cultivation base that Sumo saw was a god of burial, and an early stage one at that. This was not comparable to Windy Rain City in the past. Sumo walked to the old site of the Heavenly Tower. However, the so-called Heavenly Tower was no longer there. In its place was a 3-story casino called the Fortune Gathering Pavilion. In fact, there was a very strange phenomenon. Regardless of whether it was a rich or poor place, there would never be a shortage of casinos. That was because it was a kind of greed. "This isn't the old tower anymore," said Yiwuhue. "Time flies." Sumo sighed. "I really don't know how many tens of thousands of years ago we went. Now we can only go in and have a look." And so, Sumo entered the casino. There were very few people on the streets of the city, but there were many gamblers here. There was an uproar. The moment she entered, Sumo felt a cultivator's divine sense sweep over her. Mid-stage Sea Destruction Realm. Sumo's heart skipped a beat. In the current Windy Rain City, this realm was definitely a top-notch expert. Sumo remained calm and did not even suppress her cultivation base. This was because she noticed that there were many mortals in the casino. At this moment, that mid-stage Sea Destruction Realm cultivator would definitely treat her as a mortal. In fact, that was indeed the case. Sumo quickly blended into the crowd. Chapter 761. The gambling chips in the luck-gathering pavilion were naturally spirit stones. These spirit stones could be used to exchange for many things. Even if you were a mortal, you could only use spirit stones here. However, to Sumo, the gambling chips in the entire casino were somewhat shabby. After all, Sumo was a rebirth-level almighty being. To him, this entire casino was not even worth mentioning. "Sumo, speaking of which, we got to know each other through gambling?" Yiwuhue laughed. "Yes." Sumo laughed. "Why, do you want to try watching them gamble? Why don't you come out and gamble with them? I reckon that you can win the entire casino." Not interested." Yiwuhue shook his head. "Their gambling skills do not look like much, and they seem to gamble very monotonously." In the luck-gathering pavilion, their gambling was indeed monotonous, because most of the cultivators actually shook the dice, and even guessed black and white. This kind of gambling was really boring to the extreme. However, they had a common trait: fast. In the casino, winning and losing were extremely fast. This was not like a casino at all. Those cultivators shouted and went crazy. They were even gambling as if they were not breathing. Winning or losing, it seemed that the next round was starting immediately. Sumo said, "The atmosphere here is very strange. Could it be that this is the current epitome of the 8th mainland? They look like they can't wait to lose everything." "Yes," Yiwuhue said, "I feel the same. They are gambling in a hurry. What they want is not winning or losing, but progress." Sumo frowned. "Little brother, are you going to bet? You have been standing there for a long time. Why are you in a daze? If you don't want to bet, you can borrow some light. Don't block the people behind." At this moment, the young cultivator in charge of shaking the dice said. Sumo was slightly stunned, because he had just stood there. Sigh. "Little brother, make way." At this moment, an old man behind pulled Sumo and shouted at the dealer, "I bet 10 spirit stones. Big. Open. Open. Big. Small. Boom, sigh. Again, quick. I'll bet 20 spirit stones." I'll bet 30 yuan. Make it small this time. Quick. Hurry up, Zhuangjia. As soon as Sumo turned around, the gambling table he was at actually opened 2 rounds. That speed made Sumo feel a little suffocated. Was this a gamble? The gamblers did not even think, nor did they ponder. This wasn't about winning at all. They were gambling purely for the sake of gambling, and every one of them was crazy. Sumo moved to another table. 50 spirit stones. Small. Sumo casually threw out the spirit stone. However, his speed was very fast. Otherwise, he would have been chased away again. Open. As soon as Sumo threw out the spirit stones, the cup seemed to be opened. The banker had lost and lost everything. The banker quickly lost money, and the gamblers excitedly threw themselves into the next round. Bro, are you betting or not? The banker urged again. Take it. Keep betting on small. Sumo quickly said. Open. Little. He opened the cup again. Open. Little. He opened the cup again. Sumo felt that she couldn't keep up with their rhythm. Fortunately, he didn't change. He opened the cup 9 times in a row, and all of them were small. If this situation was in a normal casino, the crowd would have already been agitated, and curses would be heard everywhere. However, here, everyone was equally excited, and no one seemed to care about winning or losing. Again. Big or small. Open. Sumo's ears were filled with this kind of voice. In a short while, Sumo's 50 normal spirit stones had become 50 mid-grade spirit stones. That was a full 100 times. However, none of the surrounding cultivators were jealous. Open. Big. Sumo's spirit stones were all gone in an instant. She couldn't help but shake her head with a smile, then turned around and left the gambling table. No one cared and no one questioned. Sumo came and went like a wisp of smoke. Yi Wuhue suddenly laughed, disappointed? I don't think you have ever seen a casino like this before. That is true, Sumo said with a smile. They are not gambling with spirit stones, Yi Wuhue said. Oh. Sumo coldly smiled. Then what is it? Actually, you saw it, didn't you? Yi Wuhue laughed. But you didn't say it out loud. Hee. Sumo shook her head and didn't speak. At this time, in the corner of the casino, there was a drunk man sitting. The man's clothes were ragged. His face was covered in dirt, and he smelled of alcohol. He had completed Break World. In Stormy Rain City, he was definitely an elite, but his condition was not right. A cultivator like that was curled up in the corner of the casino like a mortal tramp. Sumo was curious, so she squatted down in front of him. Elder, why aren't you gambling? Sumo asked. I have lost everything. The man raised his eyes. He looked at Sumo, but his face did not change. Sumo laughed. She flipped her hand and produced 100 spirit stones. This is for you. How does that sound? Really? The man asked. Really? Sumo nodded. Thank you. The man took the spirit stones. His body moved. He went to the nearest gambling table. At that time, his body had almost completely turned into an afterimage. Break World full time. At that moment, he looked like a cultivator. Big. Sumo stood up and heard the man's voice. However, just as he straightened his body, the man had already retreated. Did you lose? Sumo asked. I lost, the man casually said. I will give you more. Sumo took out 500 spirit stones and gave them to the man. This time, it took longer, but it did not last long. After 3 rounds, the man came back. Sumo gave him another 1,000 spirit stones. The man went to gamble again. He did it 3 times. On the 4th time, the man did not take Sumo's spirit stones. Tell me, what do you want? The man sat on the ground and smiled. But I don't kill people. Everyone will die. There is no need to rush. Is that enough? Sumo laughed. Yes. The man grinned. But I can only give you 1 hour. That is enough. Sumo nodded. Elder, I just want to ask you a few questions. It won't take long. Speak, the man said. You guys are living a befuddled life here. You are not gambling with spirit stones. You are gambling with time, right? Sumo asked. The man was shocked. He looked at Sumo. Are you not from here? No. Or are you not from the sealed monster continent? Otherwise, why would you ask such boring questions? The sealed monster continent. Sumo was surprised. The former 8th continent was now called the sealed monster continent? I knew it. The man looked at Sumo and smiled. But it doesn't matter where you are from. I don't want to know either. Of course, we are gambling with time. What else do you think it is? Spirit stones? That thing is just a pile of stones, and there are not many of them. This is not the 8th continent. Sumo frowned. The 8th continent? Sumo's words caused the man to be slightly taken aback. Then, he let out a long sigh. Little brother, what you said was the name before the Great Astral Tribulation. You heard it in the legends, right? Great Astral Tribulation. Yes. The man looked at Sumo. It seems that you are immortal. On the sealed monster continent, only mortals can save as many spirit stones as you. Let me tell you, it is useless at the critical moment. Haha. Sumo frowned. She didn't quite understand the man's words. The Great Astral Tribulation was the fall of Chun Luo's 4 stars. From then on, we entered the era of 3 stars, also known as the era of Oblivion. The man sighed. How long has it been since the Great Astral Tribulation? Sumo asked. 3 million years. The man said. Back then, I saw everything with my own eyes. Stars exploded one after another. The Lord of the Sealed Realm passed through immeasurably. It was the end of the world. The man's eyes were filled with fear. Chapter 762. Dark memories were often harder to forget. The Great Star Tribulation was the name the Sunken Era gave to the Great Battle of Chun Luo back then. Because back then, almost everyone, regardless of whether they were immortals or mortals, had witnessed that rare star explosion. When the 4 stars fell, the immeasurable ship arrived. That doomsday scene was forever engraved in their souls, and even their memories were passed down from generation to generation. That kind of imprint was like a nightmare that would never wake up. Thus, they began to lead a befuddled life, dragging out an ignoble existence. From their point of view, everything was meaningless. Life is impermanent. How long is life? Back then, many living beings above the 4 stars perished in an instant. No one could tell if there would be an accident in the next moment. On the former 4 planets, there were many survivors, relatives, and old friends. All of them perished in an instant. That kind of mental attack had changed a lot. In name, the Red Dust Sect was the victor of that battle. However, the Red Dust Sect did not truly grow stronger. It slowly became an extremely loose sect. It only lasted for tens of thousands of years before collapsing. The current Chun Luo 3 stars was no longer the grand occasion of the past. They didn't even trade with each other. It couldn't be said that the 3 planets and the 8th continent were isolated from each other, but they were now independent existences. The 2nd, 5th, and 7th planets were not in the worst condition. Instead, it was the 8th continent which was once the most prosperous. This was because after the Great Calamity, the surviving cultivators of the Red Dust Sect had carried out a complete purge and massacre on the 8th mainland. It was an indescribable hatred. Mu Hongchen was dead, and the peacock-revered king was subdued. This astral realm was completely abandoned. Everything they had accumulated over thousands of years had been destroyed in an instant. In the end, they vented all their anger on the 8th mainland's demon tribe. The remaining forces of the Red Dust Sect sealed off the 8th continent. That was when the demon sealing continent gained its name. The war lasted for hundreds of years, and in the end, all the demons on the 8th mainland were killed. The entire continent was cut in half by the flames of war. That was also the final battle of the Dust Net 3-star realm. After that, there were no more battles in Chunluo. Those interstellar battleships of the past were almost all gone. Almost all of them were destroyed when the 8th mainland was sealed. After the Demon Sealing War, they felt that any battleship they saw was the immeasurable ship. It was like a snake in a cup. Spaceships in space had become a taboo for them. Therefore, the connection between the various stars became less and less, and no more experts appeared. Thus, 3 million years passed on the Demon Sealing continent. 3 million years. Sumo couldn't help but let out a long sigh after listening to the man's simple description. Although the time in the cultivation world could not be measured by the time of the mortal world, this span of time was still somewhat beyond his expectations. The changes of the Chunluo 3 stars made him sigh endlessly. Yi Wuhui also secretly shook his head. Time is really a magical thing. Senior, are you going to spend your entire lives like this? Sumo smiled bitterly. Or should I say, gamble your entire lives? Of course not. The man shook his head. It's because you came to the casino that you saw all of this. If you go somewhere else, the situation will be different. Oh. Sumo was surprised. If you go to a restaurant, everyone is there to drink. If you go to a brothel, everyone is there to seek pleasure. If you go to an ordinary house, most people are there to stare blankly. Ha ha. The man laughed strangely. However, you can also go to the training hall. There are people there who desperately practice. Is it wrong to practice? Sumo asked. Ha. The man laughed. What do they practice for? Their goal is to become bedeviled. Do you really think they are practicing? Sumo frowned and did not speak. It's time. The man slowly stood up. Little brother, is the sealed monster continent a magical place? If you live like this, why don't you die? Sumo said in a deep voice. The man's body froze. He looked at Sumo with shock. Because dying is too easy. Ah. After that, the man walked to a gambling table. He had no more spirit stones, but he gambled with one hand. He had completed the breaking world, so he could regrow his limbs a long time ago. So, he was cut a few times and then continued to gamble. No one cared about that. The key was the speed of gambling. It seemed that during the process they felt that time had meaning. This world is over, Yi Wuhui said. Let's go. Sumo did not linger. He left the Gathering Luck Pavilion. Then, he casually walked around the Windy Rain City. The result was just as the man had said. The people here can no longer be called cultivators, Yi Wuhui said, because everyone's soul is dead. In other words, there are no souls in the sealed monster continent. Sumo nodded. Then, he took out the demonic boat and prepared to return to the former Dust Net 5th star. He would never return to the sealed monster continent. From a certain perspective, Sumo was even willing to see a continent devoid of life, rather than such a barren land of the soul. The demonic boat moved and Sumo disappeared into the sky. Not long after Sumo disappeared, a young girl appeared in the sky of the sealed monster continent. The young girl was extremely beautiful. She wore red clothes that looked as if they were dyed with blood. She had a very special presence. She looked like a demon, but not a demon, like a ghost, but not a ghost. At the same time, she had a pair of strange eyes. They were deep and bottomless. Just one look at those eyes would make you sink deep into them. She landed on the highest mountain peak of the sealed monster continent. Then, she looked in the direction where Sumo disappeared and frowned. Because she seemed to have sensed a trace of the power of the Star River. Who is that? Someone from the Star River? The young girl in red asked in her heart. However, she was not in a hurry. She knew that there were only 3 stars to the north of this place. So, she sat cross-legged on the highest mountain peak of the sealed monster continent and began to form a seal. First, she set up a barrier around the entire sealed monster continent. She was here to take souls. Because she was a soul taker from the dead souls star field. That soul power could allow her to quickly reach a higher realm. However, before, she had absorbed the power of real dead souls. However, the sealed monster continent was different. It was obviously full of living beings, but the dead soul aura here was even denser than the other dead soul stars. What a strange place! The young girl in red smiled faintly. It seems that I can advance to another realm. After saying that, she sat cross-legged and began to form a seal. It was a special seal. An invisible force instantly covered the entire sealed monster continent. At this moment, everyone on the sealed monster continent trembled slightly. Then, they stopped all activities. At that moment, it was as if the young girl in red had frozen time. Then, wisps of black gas were extracted from between their eyebrows and gathered in the air. Then, they gathered at the feet of the young girl in red. The black gas was like a great river. Chapter 763. The Fifth Star of Dustnet. The fifth planet of Dustnet was once the base of the Red Dust Sec's Right Patrol Fleet. Back then, the Right Patrol envoy Sima Yunyan controlled everything here. Her authority surpassed even that of the Fifth Star Lord. Sumo had never been to the Fifth Star. However, Sumo remembered that Sima Yunyan had not died. Furthermore, Mu Hongchen had even given her a rotten breaking pill. Logically speaking, Sima Yunyan should have already reached the one-era sempiternal realm. She should still be alive after 3 million years. Therefore, Sumo decided to go to the Fifth Star to take a look. Sima Yunyan and Zheningbu were the two people he wanted to find. They might know some news about Mu Hongchen. Sumo guessed that Mu Hongchen must have awakened in the past 300 years. Otherwise, the Dust Sieve Sutra wouldn't have the words Dust Sieve 3 stars. Therefore, he wanted to start from Mu Hongchen and find the place where Wu Air was sealed. Back then, the green-robed figure in the Soul Depository cave only said to let the fated person come to the Dust Luo world to save her. However, if Sumo wanted to find the place where she was truly sealed, it would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. The fifth star of the Dust Net star was not too big. Sumo's divine sense was enough to cover the entire star. This place feels better than the demon sealing continent, Yi Wuhui said. N. Sumo nodded. After all, there wasn't a real battle here back then. It could be considered an undamaged planet. It's a pity that the Red Dust sect was disbanded. Otherwise, we might have been able to revive with the 3 stars. Yi Wuhui laughed. The previous gambling addict's words can only be taken as a reference. Of the Red Dust sect's 3 great patrol envoys, only 3 had survived. However, in the end, the Red Dust sect actually disbanded. There must be a more complicated reason behind it. I don't believe that the other 3 stars are like the demon-sealing continent, living a befuddled life. Yes, I hope so, Sumo said. Sumo's divine sense swept through the 5th star. He discovered that 3/4 of the planet was actually an ocean. However, those seas were all black and looked extremely stifling. Actually, Sumo didn't know. That sea had once been the Red Dust sect's largest airship base. However, the world had changed, and yesterday was no longer here. There was only one continent on the 5th star. From the void, the continent looked more like a large island. However, this island was already 4 to 5 times the size of the demon-sealing continent. The continent was high in the middle and low on all sides. But in the middle was a ring-shaped mountain range. In the middle of the mountain range was a basin. That basin was thousands of miles in circumference. It had to be said that the terrain here was extremely unique. Sumo chose a city in the center of the basin, because this position must be very important. The city was also relatively old, but it wasn't very big. Compared to the Windy Rain city of the demon-sealing continent, it was only half the size. Nostalgia City. 3 ancient characters floated in the air above the city. Interesting name, Yi Wuhui said. Thinking of the past? Sumo said playfully. This city seems to be less than 3 million years old. Perhaps it was built after the great calamity of the stars. There should be some meaning to it. As she spoke, Sumo had already landed in the city. The city wasn't big, but it was quite clean. It wasn't as prosperous as Windy Rain City in the past, but it wasn't as desolate as the current Windy Rain City. The entire city looked very normal. The streets were neat and the houses were scattered. Many cultivators were coming and going. Their realms seemed to be lower. Most of the cultivators were in the mortal realm. There were almost no god-bearing cultivators or world-breaking cultivators. However, every cultivator's expression was very normal. They didn't have the blank and crazy expressions of the demon-sealing continent cultivators. Sumo saw 2 cultivators haggling when trading magic treasures, and 4 or 5 cultivators drinking tea and talking loudly in a teahouse. Of course, their realms weren't high. But that state was very good. Especially Sumo and Yi Wuhui, who had just returned from the demon-sealing continent, they felt very comfortable. It wasn't depressing here. Surviving a calamity. Yi Wuhui sighed. Sumo, I feel that this is the state that the Dust Net 3 stars should have, calm and peaceful. Sumo laughed. It seems that this planet might be managed by a sect. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so orderly. I think that the mortal realm sect is gone, but it doesn't mean that those powerful people are gone. Maybe there's a new sect. At this time, Sumo's divine sense spread out again. In the entire city, there were only 2 early-stage world-breaking cultivators. They were in the northwest corner of the city. So, Sumo went to the northwest corner of Nostalgia City. Along the way, they saw many scenes of life in Nostalgia City. This place was completely different from Windy Rain City. All the people were very optimistic and didn't have the slightest hint of decadence. In their eyes, Sumo saw more happiness and satisfaction. Sumo went northwest. At this time, he found that many people were walking in this direction. This made Sumo curious. So, Sumo looked up. In the northwest of Nostalgia City, there was green smoke and a hazy immortal fog. Sumo was stunned. There's an ancient temple there. Yi Wuhui saw everything through Sumo's eyes. That's right. Sumo smiled. Green bricks and gray tiles, it's a very simple ancient temple. I wonder who it worships? The incense is very strong. With that, Sumo's figure moved and went directly to the front of the ancient temple. With his realm, the cultivators of Nostalgia City couldn't see that he had used a spell. Of course, the people around him didn't seem to notice him. They all went to the ancient temple. Green bricks and gray tiles, simple and unadorned. This temple wasn't too big. It was only a courtyard with 3 entrances. However, its aura was completely different from everything around it. This is an ancient temple from 3 million years ago? Yi Wuhui said. I can't be sure. Sumo shook her head. However, this ancient temple must have existed before this Nostalgia City. It's obvious that this ancient temple is as old as the city. The door of the ancient temple was open and unguarded. However, everyone who entered the ancient temple was very orderly. They entered from the left and exited from the right. Although there were many people, there was no noise and no crowding. At the same time, their expressions were very solemn. To them, this ancient temple was an extremely sacred place. Sumo chose to enter the ancient temple normally. In front of him was a female cultivator, who was only in the core formation realm. In her hand, aside from the incense, there was also a bamboo basket. In the basket there were a few ordinary peaches and a pair of embroidered shoes. However, the peaches were very clean, and the embroidered shoes were also very good. It seemed that she had prepared them as an offering. Sumo couldn't help but be slightly surprised. Behind him was a male cultivator at the peak of nascent soul realm. Like Sumo, he seemed to be empty-handed. However, Sumo saw that he was actually carrying incense and 2 pots of wine. Interesting. Who are they worshipping in the temple? Sumo thought. Yiwuhui was also a little curious. Sumo didn't use any techniques. She just followed the crowd and walked inside. Inside the temple, it was quiet and elegant. Plums, orchids, bamboo, and chrysanthemums were scattered everywhere. People came and went in silence, but it wasn't depressing. It was just peaceful. On the second floor of the courtyard, there was a big hall in the middle. The door of the hall was open. The two cultivators in the early stage of breaking realm that Sumo sensed were inside the hall. However, that wasn't important at the moment, because when Sumo saw the statue of the god worshipped in the hall, her expression suddenly changed. Mu Hongqin! Yiwuhui exclaimed. Chapter 764. Mu Hongqin. The statue that was worshipped in this ancient temple was actually Mu Hongqin? This was something that Sumo and Yiwuhui could never have imagined. The statue was 7 feet tall, and its entire body was emitting a faint brilliance. Mu Hongqin's appearance was vivid and lifelike, as if she was a living person. Even her eyes were similar to Mu Hongqin's in the past, majestic and sharp. However, there was a hint of mercy in them. The red dress she was wearing was even more special. It was covered with magical runes. Most of them were runes of the first life immortal level, and a few were actually runes of the reincarnation level. The entire statue was carved from a single piece of supreme-grade spirit stone. In the dust sift 3 realms, this statue could be considered a priceless treasure. If this statue was not destroyed by external forces, it could last for tens of thousands of years. This could be considered unparalleled in the current dust sift 3 realms. But, who was the one who built this ancient temple, and who was the one who made this statue for Mu Hongqin? Sumo and Yiwuhui had questions in their hearts. At that moment, the core formation female cultivator in front of him began to worship. That female cultivator was actually worshipping her mother. Her mother was immortal. The peaches were planted by her mother, and the embroidered shoes were made by her mother. Moreover, she offered them to Lady Hongqin without asking for anything. She just wanted to thank Lady Hongqin for keeping this place safe. Worshipping without asking for anything? Such a thing did not seem to happen often. In fact, many so-called believers came to worship because they had something to ask for. Little brother, aren't you going to worship Lady Hongqin? The nascent soul male cultivator behind Sumo said to Sumo. That was because the female cultivator in front of them had finished worshipping, but Sumo did not move. Oh! Sumo smiled. I'm not going to worship. Please go ahead. Sumo took 2 steps forward and gave way. However, he went straight into the main hall. His gaze swept to the 2 sides of Mu Hongqin's statue. That was because there was a cultivator sitting cross-legged on each side of the statue. They were a man and a woman, and both of them looked middle-aged. The early stage of the world-breaking realm. The 2 cultivators sat there quietly. However, when Sumo's gaze fell on them, they were stunned. The 2 cultivators couldn't help but open their eyes. That was because they felt a sense of oppression. Although the oppressive feeling he gave off was very gentle, they immediately realized that this cultivator in cyan robes was not ordinary. Fellow Taoists. Sumo smiled faintly. Inadvertently, Sumo had already set up a barrier. At this moment, in the eyes of the worshipping cultivators, there was no change in the hall. They couldn't see Sumo at all, let alone hear their voices. Greetings, Senior. The 2 Break World cultivators quickly stood up and bowed to Sumo. They couldn't see Sumo's realm because the difference was too great. You don't have to be so polite. Sumo smiled. I want to ask you about something. Is that convenient? Senior, please speak. The male cultivator said. Is the statue you worship the former leader of the Red Dust sect, Mu Hongqin? Sumo said. When the 2 early-stage Break World cultivators heard Sumo's words, they were shocked. In Nostalgia City, There were only the two of them who knew that Lady Red Dust was the leader of the Red Dust sect 3 million years ago. The male cultivator didn't answer Sumo's question. Instead, he asked, "Senior, you are?" "Haha." Sumo smiled. "You don't have to worry about anything. Back then, I was a loose cultivator who traveled to the dust world. At that time, there were 7 stars in the dust world. The Red Dust sect and the Feather Kingdom sect controlled it together. Now I've returned to the old place, but I find that things are different. I happened to see this old temple and saw many people worshipping it. That's why I asked." The two cultivators nodded their heads before releasing a long sigh. "It seems that Senior hasn't been to the dust world for at least 3 million years. The male cultivator said, "Actually, it's a long story. 3 million years ago, the Red Dust sect and the Feather Kingdom fought. Then, there was a big calamity. The dust world today is unrecognizable. We are indeed worshipping the Red Dust sect's sect master. However, the people now call her Lady Red Dust. Aside from the two of us, no one else in Nostalgia City knows about that history." "Oh!" Sumo was shocked. "Why?" "Because the cultivators back then were all dead. Moreover, they deliberately didn't mention that history when they were alive. The former 5th star of the dust world was renamed the Red Dust Star. If the two of us die, no one will know about the past." "Deliberately forgotten?" Sumo asked. "Yes." The male cultivator sighed. "Because my master once said that we can't become the second monster sealing continent." "Who are the two masters?" Sumo said. "Sima Yunyan," the male cultivator said. "The right patrol envoy of the Red Dust sect, Sima Yunyan?" Sumo was shocked. "That's right." The cultivator looked at Sumo in surprise. "It seems that Senior is really old-fashioned. The people of the Red Dust world only know Lady Red Dust. They don't know Sima Yunyan anymore." "Oh!" Suemo was surprised, not knowing what he meant. "Senior, you don't know. The war back then consumed a lot of energy. Master was lucky to survive and returned to the Red Dust Star. Then, she went into seclusion for 200 years and finally broke through to the immortal realm. However, she didn't participate in the Demon Sealing War and left the Red Dust sect. Sect leader Jun of the Red Dust sect came to the Red Dust Star 3 times to invite Master out, but she refused." "Why did left envoy Sima refuse?" Sumo asked. "The first reason was that my master was a little disheartened. The second reason was that she didn't agree to the Demon Sealing War. She has always been grateful to Sect Leader Mu. She said that if Sect Leader Mu hadn't saved her, she would have died. She would never forget Sect Leader Mu's kindness. The Demon Sealing Continent belongs to Sect Leader Mu. How could she kill him? This statue was built for Lady Red Dust, and that's how Nostalgia City was built." "Her whole life?" Sumo raised her eyebrows. "Yes." The male cultivator said, "Master is long gone." "How long has she passed away?" Sumo asked. 100,000 years. The male cultivator said, "She died of natural causes when she was going through the 5 signs of decay. Because she didn't want to succeed." "Why?" Sumo didn't understand. "Master said that her death is equivalent to taking away the darkest part of the past. Everyone in the Red Dust sect should be responsible for the dust world today." The female cultivator said. "She warned us that we don't have to diligently pursue cultivation. The great Tao is endless, what's the limit? She said that if we have the ability, we should ensure the safety of the world. That's enough." Sigh. Yi Wuhui heard their words and couldn't help but sigh. Sima Yunyan was enlightened in the end. Sumo replied in her divine sense, "It's this kind of enlightenment that brought the 5th star to its current state. Otherwise, this would be the second demon sealing continent." "Both of you mentioned sect leader Jin. Is he the former left patrol officer of the Red Dust sect, Zheningbu?" Sumo said. "That's right. It's him." The male cultivator said. "Which star is he on now?" Sumo asked. 2 million years ago, he was on the second star of Dust Net. Now, we don't know if he's still there. There's no news between the 3 stars. But we know that the star was renamed No Return. Chapter 765. The Star of No Return. Sumo was sitting on the demonic ship in the galaxy. Beside her was Yi Wuhui, who was playing with the little white pig. He Yu Hong didn't fly out at all. They didn't stop at Nostalgia City. Because the 2 disciples of Sima Yunyan didn't know anything about Mu Hongqian. All they knew was what Sima Yunyan told them. And from the statue that Sima Yunyan made for Mu Hongqian, she probably didn't see Mu Hongqian after that. So, Sumo left the red dust planet and went straight to the Star of No Return. Red dust. No return. Yi Wuhui picked up the little white pig and couldn't help but smile. Sumo, although Sima Yunyan tried his best to erase the great tribulation of the stars, he still remembers the old kindness, so he changed the name of the 5th planet to Red Dust. And the Star of No Return is most likely the name Jin Ingbu changed. It seems that he is determined not to return to the Red Dust Galaxy. Probably. Sumo nodded. This time, I hope that Jin Ingbu is alive. He went to invite Sima Yunyan back then. That means that he is the leader of the Red Dust sect after the Great Tribulation of the Stars. He should know the most. Sumo, what if Jin Ingbu is also dead? Yi Wuhui looked at Sumo and asked. If he is dead? Sumo frowned, then said slowly, then I will search the 3 stars. If in the end I still can't find her, I will go to the Divine Peacock Mountain in the Prajna world. Even if she can't be reincarnated, Yi Wuhui said. Yes. Sumo nodded. Good. Yi Wuhui smiled and nodded. No matter what, I will accompany you. Sumo looked in the direction of the Star of No Return and didn't say anything. This time, the demonic ship was very fast. In the meantime, Sumo even made it perform a space jump. The planet of No Return was right in front of him. Right at that moment, Sumo raised her brows. A flying ship. Yi Wuhui looked into the distance. The little white pig bared its fangs and brandished its claws. This guy was a warmonger. However, Sumo hadn't used it for a long time. At this moment, the demonic ark had already arrived at the outer realm of the planet of No Return. 2 black flying ships were parked about 10 kilometers in front of the demonic boat. They seemed to be intercepting Sumo. Sumo couldn't help but laugh. Those 2 flying ships could not be compared to the main battleships of Red Dust and Feather Roar. However, they were still very mighty in the void at this moment. Didn't they say that there are no airships in the 3-star world? Weren't the people of the monster sealing continent afraid of ships? I thought the immeasurable ship was here, Yi Wuhui said. A frog in a well. Most of the cultivators who sealed the continent were judging others by their own standard. Isn't the Red Dust Star different from the monster sealing continent? Sumo sneered. Now that I think about it, although this planet of No Return is not as strong as the Red Dust Star and Feather Roar, it should still have some fighting power. At this moment, a small boat was released from one of the flying ships. The boat was extremely fast. In an instant, it was only 100 meters away from Sumo's demonic boat. There were only 2 cultivators on the boat. They were both mid-stage soul-bearing cultivators. They looked like 2 outposts. These 2 outposts were mid-stage soul-bearing cultivators. Compared to the monster sealing continent and the Red Dust Star, they seemed to be a level higher. May I ask where you 2 esteemed guests are from? One of the soul-bearing cultivators was extremely polite. We're from the Red Dust Star. Sumo smiled faintly. The Red Dust Star? The soul-bearing cultivator was slightly stunned. He immediately bowed and smiled. The planet of No Return has no contact with the Red Dust Star. Since you 2 are from the Red Dust Star, please return. The planet of No Return does not welcome any cultivators. The soul-bearing cultivator's tone was very firm. Sumo was also stunned. Then she smiled. The planet of no return does not allow any cultivators to visit? I wonder who made this rule? This is the rule of the sect of no return, the soul-bearing cultivator said. Now, the entire planet of no return is under the jurisdiction of the sect of no return? Sumo said. That's right. The soul-bearing cultivator said. The sect of no return rules the entire planet of no return. Therefore, we have the right to do so. Who is your sect master? Sumo asked again. The sect of no return serves under sect master Zhu Bu Rong. Zhu Bu Rong. Sumo looked at Yi Wuhui. Yi Wuhui shook his head. They had never seen such a cultivator in the past. In that case, help me pass on a message that an old friend of the Red Dust sect has come to visit. I hope that sect master Zhu can take the time to meet him. Sumo said. I'm sorry. The soul-bearing cultivator said apologetically. Our sect master has never seen visitors from outside the planet. For the sect of no return, there is no such thing as an old friend of the Red Dust Star. There is no need to pass on your message. Sumo couldn't help but frown when she heard this. You, a soul-bearing cultivator, can actually be the sect master's leader? Don't you need to ask for permission? Of course not. The soul-bearing cultivator said respectfully, however, this is all according to the sect master's instructions. Therefore, there is no need to ask for permission again. Sumo laughed helplessly. Fine. In that case, I'll go see your sect master directly. Why is this sect of no return so special? The path of the planet of no return seems to be different. The soul-bearing cultivator was slightly stunned. However, in the next instant, he felt that he couldn't move. His boat was frozen in space by Sumo. Sumo's demon boat swayed forward and passed the two soul-bearing cultivators' boat. At that moment, the two flying ships behind them moved. They noticed that Sumo's boat was flying over. They wanted to stop it and even prepare to attack. On the bow of the two flying ships, there was a middle-stage break-world cultivator. It seemed that they were the commanders of the two flying ships. They were the highest-level cultivators that Sumo and Yi Wuhui had seen since they returned. Although Sumo had felt that there were sea destruction cultivators on the sealed continent, she hadn't seen them. However, the two middle-stage break-world cultivators were useless in front of Sumo. Greetings, you two. Sumo smiled at them gently. The two middle-stage break-world cultivators were shocked. Before they could understand what was going on, they felt their vision go black. At that moment, Sumo's demon eye opened. How could the two middle-stage break-world cultivators resist it? They had been instantly controlled by Sumo. You two, please lead the way. I want to go to the headquarters of the sect of no return and see your sect leader Zhu. Sumo smiled. As soon as Sumo's voice fell when he looked again, the two flying ships turned around. At that moment, everyone on the flying ships had been controlled by Sumo's god soul. They were like puppets. However, Sumo didn't take their souls. Set sail. Return. The two break-world commanders shouted at the same time. Whoosh, whoosh. The two flying ships activated their formations and headed straight for the planet of no return. Sumo drove the demon boat and followed them. At the same time, he waved his hand and threw the two soul-bearing cultivators onto one of the flying ships. Otherwise, with their cultivation level and only a small boat, they would definitely die in the interstellar space after a long time. Yi Wuhui smiled and said, Sumo, with your current level, if you want to, can you control all the cultivators on the planet of no return? Of course. Sumo smiled and said, but that is meaningless. I don't want to turn them into puppets. Yes. Yi Wuhui nodded and said, if the Patriarch thought that way, that would be great. Actually, I don't understand why the Patriarch likes to turn everyone into puppet. The Three Realms Ghost Genius. Maybe he wanted something else. Sumo sighed and said, I don't believe that he really wanted to build a puppet world. After all, a puppet world is lonely. Actually, I miss him, Yi Wuhui said. Yes. Sumo looked at Yi Wuhui and thought for a moment. Miss Yi, I will help you find him. As long as he is still in the Yizang world. Thank you. Yi Wuhui looked at the starry sky and nodded. Wow. The two flying ships opened the way. Sumo and the others went straight to the continent of no return. Chapter 766. Planet No Return was the second planet of Dust Net. It was the only planet left behind by the Featherchi sect. During the Big Calamity, it had been occupied by the left patrol fleet of the Red Dust sect and the front patrol fleet. In terms of preserved combat power, it had been number 1. The No Return sect was the sect that controlled Planet No Return. At first, it had 2 fleets of the Red Dust sect as its base. However, after nearly 2 million years, the traces of the Red Dust sect were very faint. The No Return sect was the No Return sect. The purpose of the No Return sect was to never return to the other 2 planets of the Red Dust sect. That was the teaching of their ancestors when they had established their sect. As for why, not many people knew. The No Return sect's headquarters was in the northwest of Planet No Return. There were mountains there, and there were tens of thousands of peaks. It was a strange place. However, the main peak was called Returning Cloud. It was a flat peak. It had a radius of 12 miles. There was a palace on it called Returning Cloud. The Returning Cloud Palace on Returning Cloud Peak was a landmark building of Planet No Return. At this time, the 2 interstellar flying ships had flown into the inner space of Planet No Return. The No Return sect immediately discovered them. They were curious. The 2 flying ships had been stationed in outer space all year round. Why had they suddenly returned? Between the peaks, 7 battleships immediately rose into the air. They formed a fan shape and blocked the 2 flying ships in the air. Ha ha! Sumo laughed. The No Return sect reacted in time. They are well trained. They have a bit of the temperament of the Red Dust sect and the Featherchi sect, said Yi Wuhui. Unfortunately, if the 2 big sects had joined forces, they would not have been destroyed. The mastermind behind the war was a Zhang Yao. We will settle this debt sooner or later. Sumo smiled coldly. Commander Song. Commander Tang. The 7 battleships were no smaller than the 2 flying ships. Among them, there was a cultivator on each of the 2 battleships at the front. They were also 2 commanders in the middle stage of the break world. At this time, the 2 commanders, Commander Song and Commander Tang, were not under her control. Their consciousness was under Sumo's control. Commander Song. Commander Tang. The 2 middle stage break world people shouted again. They all seemed to realize that something was wrong. The 2 battleships suddenly flashed with brilliance, and a light curtain that was hundreds of feet high directly blocked in front of the 2 flying ships controlled by Sumo. Those were 2 sea annihilation grade defenses. In an instant, the 2 flying ships stopped outside the light screen. Actually, if Sumo wanted to break that light screen, it would be as easy as blowing off dust. However, when he saw the sea annihilation grade light screen, he couldn't help but sigh. Back in the day, the Hongshan battleship and the Yujiao battleship both had the power of the Samsara level. Yi Wuhui also sighed. Now, it's a little shabby. Commander Song. Commander Tang. The 2 middle stage break world commanders called for the 3rd time. However, they did not hear an answer. Bang, No Return to sect was indeed well trained. Their 3rd call went unanswered. Without a word, the 2 warships in the lead fired array light beams. They were Sea Destroyer level light beams. Sumo, who had been following the 2 flying ships, couldn't help but smile. Then, Sumo waved one hand, and a Samsara power dissipated. The 2 beams of light instantly dissipated under Sumo's Samsara power. Sumo's move shocked all the cultivators. In an instant, the 7 battleships of No Return to sect scattered. A red protective cover appeared on their battleship. The battle array was activated at the same time. It was a state of full combat. Dong, dong, dong. At the same time, a rapid bell rang on Cloud Return Peak. It was like a war drum. On the peaks of Cloud Return, thousands of murderous auras rose. On many peaks, the mysterious light of the array lit up. Yi Wuhui squinted and said, "What a strong murderous aura!" Of course, the so-called strong was relative to the stars of no return. At this moment, the entire headquarters of No Return to Sect had entered a state of combat readiness. It was like a monster that had been lying comfortably suddenly flew up and showed its fangs. This is definitely an instinct that has been developed for millions of years, Yi Wuhui said. The sense of crisis of the stars of no return is far stronger than that of the demon sealing realm and the red dust realm. The demon sealing continent is drunk and dreaming, and the red dust realm is peaceful. Only the stars of no return still have murderous auras. Sumo nodded. Then, he gently separated his hands. At this time, the two flying ships in front of him separated. That scene stunned the two commanders in the middle stage of the break world on the other side of the light screen, because they saw a black boat coming toward them. On the boat there were two cultivators, a man and a woman. The male cultivator looked ordinary, but he had an extraordinary temperament. The female cultivator was wearing a blue dress, but her image was fleeting. A soul body? At the same time, the female cultivator was holding a white and fat pig in her arms. Who were they? None of the people present knew Sumo, let alone Yi Wuhui. What shocked them the most was that they saw with their own eyes that the green-clothed male cultivator on the boat gently pushed away the two interstellar flying ships of the sect of no return. Clang, 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 the warning bell of the sect of no return kept ringing. At this time, many cultivators had flown out of the Cloud Return Palace. The leader was a middle-aged cultivator, wearing a brocade robe and looking dignified. Late-stage Sea Destruction Realm. This realm could be considered first-class in the current Dust Luo 3-star realms. It was the sect master of the sect of no return, Zhu Butong. Behind him were a few cultivators who looked like elders. They were also cultivators of the Sea Destruction realm. The power displayed by the sect of no return could be said to be the best in the Dust Luo 3-star realms. Sect Master, the two commanders called out. Since the sect master had appeared, there was nothing for them to do. At this time, as soon as Zhu Butong moved, he was already standing in front of the people of the sect of no return. He frowned and looked at Sumo. Unfortunately, he had never seen Sumo, but he could feel the power in Sumo's body. That was definitely an existence that he could not contend against. Senior. Zhu Butong thought for a moment, then bowed deeply. Hee. Sumo smiled warmly. Then he waved his hand, and a gap appeared in the light screen of the Sea Destruction realm. Lifting something heavy as if it were light, Sumo drove the demonic ship through the gap, then stopped 300 feet in front of Zhu Butong. At this moment, all the cultivators on the battleship of the sect of no return held their breath. All of them understood that this person in front of them was an existence that they could not hope to reach. The warning bell stopped abruptly, because there was no point in warning. If Sumo took out her bell, she could directly turn the planet of no return into interstellar dust. Sect Master of no return, Zhu Butong? Sumo looked at Zhu Butong and asked. Yes, Senior. Zhu Butong was very polite, and there was not a trace of unnaturalness on his face. That was because there was nothing wrong with respecting or even submitting to an absolute powerhouse. To them, Sumo was like to an immortal. Senior, may I ask who you are? Sumo smiled faintly. I am an old friend of the Dust Sift 7-star realm. I personally experienced the Great Astral Tribulation back then. Oh. Zhu Butong started, then smiled awkwardly. It's too late for me to have not experienced the Great Astral Tribulation back then. I wonder what Senior has come to the sect of no return? I want to find a person, Sumo said. Who? The left patrol envoy of the Red Dust sect, Zheningbu. Sumo said. Zhu Budong's expression changed when he heard this. Chapter 767. The left patrol of the Red Dust sect, Zheningbu? The rest of the no-return cultivators were confused by Sumo's words. They didn't know who that was. However, Zhu Butong and the 4C Annihilation Realm elders behind him paled slightly. They were the only cultivators left in the sect who knew Zheningbu. They were the only ones left in the sect who knew him. Sect Master Zhu, you should know him, right? Sumo could tell from Zhu Budong's expression that he knew Zheningbu, and that they had a close relationship. Zhu Butong hesitated, then nodded. Of course I do. Sect Master Zhen is my master. Haha. Sumo couldn't help but laugh. It was actually another disciple? He'd thought of this possibility before. He'd met Sima Yunyan's disciple on Red Dust Planet, Zhen Ingbu's disciple on Planet No Return. This was a kind of luck. Is Zhen Ingbu still alive? Sumo asked. Sumo's tone made Zhu Butong feel a bit awkward. Master has been in seclusion all this time. Seclusion? Suemo smiled. Where will you seclude yourself? This. Zhu Butong hesitated. Senior, my master has been in seclusion for many years and doesn't care about worldly affairs. That's why he doesn't see any visitors. Ha ha! Sumo smiled playfully at Zhu Butong. So you really are his disciple. You don't see visitors on Planet No Return either. I wanted to see you just now, but was stopped outside. Senior, please don't blame me. Zhu Butong said. That's the rule of Planet No Return. The rule of Planet No Return? Those two outer star commanders were carrying out your orders, so I naturally don't blame them. Suemo said with a smile. However, I'll have them clear the path for me immediately. They made the alarm bells ring. Don't you think you're just like them? Zhu Burong's forehead was covered in sweat. He naturally understood Sumo's words. If sect leader Zhu finds it difficult, then I don't mind letting sect leader Zhu lead the entire fleet to continue clearing the way for me. With that, Sumo smiled faintly. At the same time, his vision instantly darkened. Hua looking again, the 7 interplanetary battleships in the void actually moved at the same time. They all aimed the cannons on the deck at the Cloud's returning palace on the Cloud's returning peak. At this time, the commanders of the 7 warships were all standing stupefied at the bow of the ship. They had been completely controlled by Sumo and had lost their own consciousness. If the 7 warships were to open fire at the same time, the entire Cloud returning palace would be blasted to the ground. Puppet technique. Zhu Burong's face paled. He had heard of such a powerful and magical spell, but today was the first time he had seen it. Sumo's realm and methods were far beyond his imagination. Previously, he had thought that Sumo was only a sempiternal realm expert. But now, it seemed that Sumo was definitely a rebirth realm expert. That was an existence that even the Dust Net 3 stars could not resist. Even 3 million years ago, rebirth realm experts were also experts of the Dust Net star domain. Zhu Burong knew some stories about the great calamity of the stars. At this time, he did not want to let the past repeat itself. A rebirth realm expert was enough to destroy a star. He did not have the ability to stop it. Senior, please calm down. Zhu Burong bowed deeply again. This junior is willing to lead the way. Haha. Very good. Sumo nodded. Zhu Burong did not say anything else. With a thought, a black flying saucer appeared under his feet. The flying saucer was an immortal realm magic treasure. It was as smooth as jade and had a diameter of 3 feet. Zhu Burong stood on it and bowed to Sumo again. Senior, please follow me. With that, the flying saucer turned into a stream of light and sped towards the southeast of the planet of no return. Sumo smiled and steered the demonic ship after it, disappearing in an instant. Only then did the commanders of the no-return sect regain their senses. In that instant they did not know what had happened at all. They only saw the formation cannons of their warships aimed at Cloud Return Palace. The two galactic commanders were even more confused. They did not know why they had returned to the inner space of the planet of no return. Elder Sun, what happened? One of the commanders asked. Elder Sun, who had been standing behind Zhu Burong, had a calm expression. It's nothing. That senior is a friend of the no-return sect from 3 million years ago. You do not need to panic. The sect master will take care of everything. Everyone, go back to your duties. A friend from 3 million years ago? Hearing Elder Sun's words, everyone had some doubts. Because 3 million years ago, there had not been a true no-return sect. How could there be a friend of the no-return sect? However, they had all seen the strength that Sumo had displayed just now. Therefore, no one asked any more questions. Since nothing had happened, they each led their own warships and dispersed. It was a good thing that there had not been a huge battle. Elder Sun, what do you think of the situation? Elder Mia-hai asked after everyone had dispersed. If it's a blessing, it's not a curse. If it's a curse, we can't avoid it. Elder Sun let out a long sigh. However, judging from the situation just now, that cultivator may not want to do anything to the no-return sect. Otherwise, he can turn us into ashes with a flip of his hand. And if it's really the revenge of the former demon race, then, the other elders listened and nodded silently. Elder Sun's meaning was very clear. If the demon race took revenge, then the doomsday of the planet of no return had arrived. There was also a group of mountains in the southeast of the planet of no return. Similarly, there were tens of thousands of mountains, and huge rocks towered into the sky. If one was not familiar with the geography of the planet of no return, it was easy to confuse this place with the Clouds Mountains, because they were simply too similar to each other. What is this place? Sumo asked Zhu Burong, who was leading the way in front. Thousand Cloud Mountain. This place and the Clouds Mountain can be called a pair of twin mountain ranges. One is in the northwest of the planet of no return, and the other is in the southeast of the planet of no return. Senior, you should know that this used to be the second planet of Chun Luo. Legend has it that the black and white demon king of the Yu-Chi sect cultivated in these two mountain ranges. Originally, they were called the Black and White Demon Mountains. After my master took control of everything, he changed their names. Senior, look at the mountain in the middle. That's the Thousand Cloud Mountain. Sumo looked in the direction Zhu Burong was pointing. Among the mountains, there was indeed a mountain with a flat top. However, this mountain was grayish-white, completely different from the dark brown of the Clouds Mountains. At the same time, there was no palace on the Thousand Cloud Mountain. There seemed to be a small town within a radius of 10 miles. There was a forest outside the town. There was even smoke rising from the chimneys in the town. My master is in that town, Zhu Burong said. Sumo was slightly taken aback, because when he scanned the Thousand Cloud Mountain with his divine sense, apart from the ripples of the formation at the outermost area, there was not a trace of the aura of a cultivator at the peak. A mortal town? At this moment Yi Wuhui also saw it, and couldn't help but look at Sumo. The corner of Sumo's mouth curved, and then she said to Zhu Burong, Sect Leader Zhu, your master is undergoing the 5 signs of decay, right? Chapter 768. The 5 Blight. Hearing Sumo's question, Yi Wuhui understood. Unfortunately, she had not passed the 5 Blight yet. Maybe one day, after Sumo reforged her body, she would also pass the 5 Blight. But then, would she not be able to stay by Sumo's side? For a moment, Yi Wuhui's thoughts ran wild. She looked at the small town, her gaze becoming distant. Senior is right. At this moment, Zhu Burong nodded helplessly. Actually, Master's 5 Blight will be complete soon. So, we don't want him to be disturbed. Senior, Right now, Zhu Burong still did not know Sumo's identity, but he still wanted to plead for Master. However, he knew that his words did not carry much weight, so he did not continue. It did not matter whether he said it or not. He could not influence Sumo. In the infinite worlds there were very few people who could influence Sumo. Sumo smiled. Is this why you have sealed the planet of no return and do not see any visitors? Yes. Zhu Burong nodded again. However, even on normal days, the planet of no return rarely interacts with the outside world. The power of the planet of no return is only for self-protection. Although this power cannot withstand a single blow from Senior. But the planet of no return has always been vigilant in times of peace. Sumo nodded. Actually, he was certain about the danger of the planet of no return. After all, the chances of someone like him coming to the planet of no return were extremely low. That was a rule set by Zheningbu back then, right? Sumo asked again. Yes. Zhu Burong said. The rule set by Master is that no cultivator is allowed to leave the planet of no return. If you must leave, don't come back. The cultivators of the Red Dust sect are not allowed to return to the previous planet. Why is there such a rule? Sumo was puzzled. We are not very sure either. Zhu Burong said. It is said that not long after the Demon Sealing War, Master reorganized the Red Dust sect and changed its name to the Sect of No Return. Unfortunately, I had just started cultivating and did not know the details. Later on, I asked Master. However, he doesn't want to talk about it. Only once, he said with a sigh, I can't go back. Can't go back? Sumo frowned. Why? I don't know. Zhu Burong shook his head. As they spoke, they had already arrived above the 1,000 Clouds peak. Are there only mortals in this town? Sumo asked. Both. Zhu Burong nodded. Of course, my master is a cultivator who is undergoing tribulation. The others are true mortals. Those mortals were all sent here by you people who didn't return to the sect, right? Amen. Zhu Burong said. However, we did not force ourselves. This small town had been flourishing for thousands of years. In that small town there was a completely different world. Inside the barrier, it's not exactly the same as what we see now. They didn't even know that they lived on the 1,000 Cloud Peak. In other words, this is a world raised by no return sect? Sumo looked at the small town thoughtfully. You could say that. Senior. At this moment, Zhu Burong took out a light red token. My master is in the 3 old houses on the westernmost side of the small town. This is the token to enter the 1,000 Clouds barrier. Master once said that unless he comes out, I will not be allowed to take half a step into the 1,000 Clouds peak. Today, I hope that Senior will allow me to not enter. Zhu Burong bowed and handed over the token with both hands. Actually, with Sumo's realm, that samsara-level barrier could not stop her. Zhu Burong just did not want Sumo to force her way in. Alright. Sumo reached out and took the token, then smiled. Thank you, Sect Master Zhu, for leading the way. The sect is busy, you can go back now. I believe that the way you pointed out is definitely correct. Senior, don't worry. Zhu Burong smiled bitterly. How would I dare to joke around with the lives of the entire no-return sect? That's too serious. Farewell. Sumo smiled, then put away the demon boat. Yi Wuhui was a soul, she could not enter a mortal town like this. But she wanted to walk. Hence, Suemo draped a purple robe over her shoulders. Yi Wuhui looked like the ghostly figure of the past. No one could see her face. The little white pig jumped onto Sumo's shoulder. 2 people and 1 pig directly passed through the realm and entered that small world. Zhu Burong watched them disappear, dazed for a long time. At that moment, he really felt very helpless. There was no end to cultivation. Previously, Zheningbu's realm had already left him in the dust. The great astral tribulation was a legend to him. But today, he finally saw a legendary figure. The power of the no-return sect could not withstand a single blow from such an expert. He did not know why Sumo came to find Master. He only hoped for a good result. With a long sigh, Zhu Bu Rong turned and left on the flying saucer. The moment Sumo and Yi Wuhui entered the boundary, the scenery in front of them suddenly changed. The sky was blue, the grass was green, and the sky was clear. At this time, they stood outside a forest. In front of them was a narrow path that led straight to the small town. If a mortal looked around here, they would not know that there was a sky beyond the sky, and a world beyond the world. Sumo, do you think the world we live in is the same? Yi Wuhui suddenly said. Hm? Sumo did not seem to hear Yi Wuhui's words clearly. I mean, our Izong is also a world that is being kept, Yi Wuhui said with a smile. Ha ha! Sumo laughed. Just now, when I heard Zhu Bu Rong talk about this small world, I also had the same thought. But whether it is the Three Realms Galaxy or the Izong world, they are all actually a lotus. A lotus? Yi Wuhui said. Hm. Didn't Bu Miaotian tell you about it? Sumo said. No. Yi Wuhui said. Then maybe he doesn't know either. Sumo sighed. Actually, we are all born on lotuses. The cultivators who can plant lotuses are all peerless experts. Lotus Scholar? Yi Wuhui said. Lotus Scholar Stage 3 can plant lotuses on their own, the so-called lotus cultivator, Sumo said. Then who planted the Izong world? What stage is he? Yi Wuhui asked curiously. Haha. I don't know. Sumo shook her head. Although Lotus Scholar Stage 3 can plant lotuses, that lotus is only a small world. The world is also evolving. I once saw a lotus cultivator in the galaxy. He was a Dharma Lotus King. Dharma Lotus King? Above the Lotus Scholar is the Dharma Lotus King. Every big world like Galaxy and Izong actually has a Dharma Lotus King, and there is only one. I don't know who the Dharma Lotus King of Izong is. Sumo laughed coldly. But I really want to know sooner. The destruction of Galaxy is related to him. Yi Wuhui said. Izong swallowed Galaxy. That Dharma Lotus King is definitely related to it. Sumo said. The world is a lotus. Yi Wuhui pondered over Sumo's words. Following the small path, the two talked as they walked until they reached the entrance of the small town. At the entrance of the small town, there was a stone monument, Wufan Town. Chapter 769. Wufan Town. Sumo looked at the name of the town and couldn't help but smile. The Wufan most likely corresponded to the 5 declines. However, Sumo didn't know much about the 5 declines, because he had never experienced the so-called 5 declines. After entering the town, Sumo looked around. The town was very quiet, and there were some pedestrians on the central street. They were all ordinary townspeople. Besides, there were also some shops. The scale of those shops wasn't considered big, and they were probably mainly for the convenience of the townspeople. Sumo and Yi Wuhui weren't in a hurry, and walked slowly on the long street. Although in the eyes of mortals, this was an endless world. However, Sumo's divine sense spread out. In fact, this small world only had a radius of a few dozen miles. Zheningbu definitely couldn't run out of this town. They entered the town from the east, and according to Ningbu Rong, Zheningbu's house was the westernmost. This entire street was only about 2 miles. Sumo and Yi Wuhui walked along the way and saw the local customs. It looked like an ordinary mortal town. There wasn't a single cultivator. However, those townspeople didn't feel strange when they saw Sumo and Yi Wuhui. It seemed that they were used to seeing foreign guests. There seems to be a road in the west and north of the town. I wonder where these townspeople think they lead to? Yi Wuhui asked. Haha, we can ask. With that, Sumo stopped a middle-aged man carrying a load. Big brother, where do the roads in the west and north of the town lead to? To the west and north of the town. The man stopped and smiled honestly. If you want to buy something big, go to the West City, there's everything there. If you want to have fun, go to the North City, I guarantee that you'll be happy. With that, the man carried the load and left. Alas! How could there be a West City and a North City? Yi Wuhui sighed. All those are just their illusions. It seems that the sect of no return created a special world for them. A large part of their lives are illusions. Hee hee. Sumo laughed and said, all living beings are actually just like that. As the saying goes, everything is dharma, like a dream, an illusion, a bubble, and a shadow. Like dew, like lightning. This is how one should view it. Yi Wuhui could not help but laugh. Sumo, you're indeed a reincarnated mighty cultivator. You rebirth state almighties, do you lie to others? Why would you lie to yourself? Ha ha! Sumo couldn't help but laugh loudly. The conversation between the two was full of Zen interest. They talked as they walked, and soon they had reached the west side of the town. It was a 3-room house with red walls and red tiles. From the looks of it, it was quite old. Its color was already a bit dark red, and there were a few cracks on the tiles. The walls of the courtyard were not high and the gate was black. However, the door was not closed. It was wide open. Therefore, Sumo and Yi Wuhui entered the courtyard without knocking on the door. The courtyard was quite spacious, and the stone floor was also very clean. However, there was not a single person in the courtyard. There was only a black dog lying under the eave. However, it raised its head and looked at Sumo and Yi Wuhui. It did not even bark when they entered. It yawned and actually went back to sleep. Hee hee. The little white pig's eyes lit up when it saw the dog. This little fellow had not eaten meat for a long time. However, without Sumo's orders, it did not dare to act rashly. Most importantly, the black dog's indifferent attitude saved it. Otherwise, if it barked, the little white pig would directly pounce over and swallow it. Hee hee. The little white pig deliberately bared its fangs and claws at the black dog. However, the black dog completely ignored it. It did not fall for the trick. This made the little white pig unable to act up. Is anyone there? Yi Wuhui asked loudly. However, no one responded. Is anyone there? Sumo also asked. However, there was still no response. Therefore, Sumo could only spread out her divine sense. The entire courtyard was indeed empty except for the dog. Zheningbu is not here? Yi Wuhui said. It seems so. Sumo said, however, the gate is not closed, so he should not have gone far. Perhaps he will be back soon. Sure enough, while they were talking, they heard someone humming a tune outside the door. When they looked again, a white-haired and wrinkled old man entered the courtyard. He carried a jar of wine in one hand and an oiled paper bag in the other, which seemed to contain braised food. It seemed that the old man's body was extremely healthy. Huh! When the old man saw Sumo and Yi Wuhui, he could not help but be stunned, and then immediately said with a smile, "Two distinguished guests, where did you come from? Could it be that you know that this old man, sold wine and meat today, so you specially came to accompany me?" The white-haired old man was forthright and did not seem too surprised at all. When the black dog saw that the old man had returned, it wagged its tail and came over with a fawning look. "Hey!" The old man placed the wine on the stone table in the courtyard and then opened the oiled paper bag. There was actually a roast chicken inside. The old man directly twisted a leg and threw it to the black dog. "Come, try it. However, we have guests today. We can't split it equally," the old man said with a smile. When the big black dog heard that, it did not make any noise and directly bit the chicken leg and slowly tasted it. Sumo and Yi Wuhui, on the other hand, stood in the courtyard without moving. Sumo looked at the white-haired old man with a very playful expression. "Will the appearance change in the fifth decay realm?" Sumo secretly asked Yi Wuhui. "Most of them should be able to," Yi Wuhui said with a voice transmission. I heard that the fifth decay realm of a Tibetan cultivator is actually to turn into a mortal, and then experience a process from life to death, and it may not be just once. However, if it is not perfect after 5 times, it will turn into ashes. Of course, there are also people who achieve perfection in one life. So, there are people who reach the fifth decay realm and become mortal. Mortal? Then the name of this small town really came from this. Sumo replied, in your opinion, is this old man Jiningbu? I feel that he does not look like him. I can't tell. In terms of appearance, he is naturally not. There is no fluctuation of spiritual energy in his body. Yi Wuhui said, however, the fifth decay realm is originally a mortal. It is normal for him not to have any spiritual energy fluctuation. He might not even remember who he is. Sumo nodded. Old man, we are just passers-by. We are passing by your house, and want to ask for some water. Sumo said with a clear voice. Hey. Just nice. The old man was very happy. I am alone and it is boring. Since you are here, there is no need to ask for any wine. Let us drink together. With that, the old man did not wait for Sumo to reply and took out 3 side dishes to go with the wine. Come. The old man called out enthusiastically, please sit. Old man Jin, do you only live by yourself? Sumo and Yi Wuhui sat down. Yi Wuhui's face was still covered and looked very strange. However, the white-haired old man did not ask at all. Old man Jin? The white-haired old man was stunned. Who is old man Jin? Old man Jin, isn't it you? Yi Wuhui hid his face and said slowly, just now we asked in the town, they said that your surname is Jin, and your name is Ingbu. Jiningbu? When the old man heard, his expression changed greatly. Chapter 770. Jiningbu. Hearing Yi Wuhui's words, the old man put down the wine in his hand and said angrily, Miss, who told you that? I'll go and find him now. Old Black, let's go. Then, the old man called out to the big black dog. When she looked again, the big black dog immediately stood up. Its eyes were bright, and they shared a common enemy. However, there was still a small piece of chicken skin hanging at the corner of its mouth. Suemo couldn't help but laugh at this scene. Sir, why are you so angry? Sit down first. You're cursing me to die early. Which fellow is so vicious? Then he must have taken a fancy to my 3 rooms. I'm still healthy and strong, how did I become a dead man? Dead man? Sumo couldn't help but be stunned. Old man, you said that Jiningbu is already dead? Yi Wuhui asked in surprise. Of course. The old man said. I didn't react when you said old man Jin just now. Then, when you said Jiningbu, I realized who he was. Who is he? Sumo looked at the old man and asked. The original owner of these 3 houses. The old man said. Sumo frowned. Previously, she didn't care about the old man's words at all, because she thought that the old man was very likely to be talking nonsense. Sumo believed that what Zhu Burong said was definitely the truth, because if it was false, they would definitely not be able to bear Sumo's revenge. Therefore, just now, she concluded that the white-haired old man was Jiningbu. Either he had forgotten who he was, or he was putting on an act. But now, this old man actually said that the original owner of these 3 houses was Jiningbu. This matched Zhu Burong's words. When did Jiningbu die? Yi Wuhui asked. 30 years. The old man sighed and said, otherwise, why didn't I remember? Back then, I was the one who buried him. Although that old man Jin was a harsh person, he treated me well. Who are you to him? Sumo said. Neighbor. The old man said, back then I was a poor boy. His parents died early and he didn't have a wife, so he did have some strength. Therefore, he often came to help old man Jin. He didn't have any children, so he gave me this house before he died. When I'm dead, I'll give this house to someone from this town. Unfortunately, he didn't meet a good junior. Where are you two from? Why don't you stay at my place? 3 rooms are enough. Sumo laughed. We might not be able to stay there, but we might be able to stay for a few days. Of course, the old man said with a smile. Then, he opened the jar and poured a bowl of wine for Sumo and Yi Wuhui. This girl, why hasn't she shown her face? Could it be that she's so beautiful that she's afraid of people looking at her? Oh, according to the custom of my hometown, it's inconvenient for an unmarried girl to show her face. Sumo casually made up an excuse. At this moment, Yi Wuhui didn't say a word, because Yi Wuhui's soul had already left. She used a spell to create another body, wanting to go to the small town to verify the old man's words. Where did you come from? Could it be that you have something to discuss with old man Zhen? The old man asked. We came from a faraway place, and indeed, we're here to look for old man Zhen, Sumo said. Relatives? The old man looked at Sumo and said. You can say that. Sumo didn't want to explain more to this old man. You're not here to buy the house, are you? The old man said cautiously. I've already told you that old man Zhen let me live here until I died. Sumo heard and hurriedly laughed. Old man, I'm not here to buy the house. Don't worry, this house is yours. No one can take it away from you. Haha, that's fine. My old bones can't live for more than a few years. Only with this house can I feel at ease. Come, let's drink. When the old man heard that he didn't want to buy the house, he immediately became happy. Okay. Sumo raised her cup and drank with the old man. But Yi Wuhui still didn't move. However, the old man didn't try to persuade her. It was normal for a girl not to drink. He drank with Sumo, and it could be considered to be a good time. Half of the roasted chicken was already finished. Sumo? At this moment, Yi Wuhui, who was next to her, transmitted his voice to her. She had already gathered information. How is it? Sumo secretly transmitted her voice to Yi Wuhui while drinking with the old man. This old man is right. That's what the people in the town said. Zhen Yingbu died 30 years ago. This old man helped Zhen Yingbu a lot, so the house was left to him. His surname is Qiu, and the people in the town usually call him Old Man Qiu. Yes, that's what he said just now. Sumo said. I heard that many people in the town are after his house. Yi Wuhui said with a smile. Zhen Yingbu was considered a rich man in this town back then. However, he was usually mean, and almost no one was willing to interact with him, except for Old Man Qiu. After Zhen Yingbu died, these 3 houses were left to him. How did Zhen Yingbu die back then? Sumo asked again. It said that he had a serious illness and passed away after a period of time. Yi Wuhui said, however, no one knows what illness he had. I also asked the doctor in the town, and he said that his grandfather had treated Zhen Yingbu before. Zhen Yingbu's illness was that his qi and blood were declining. How long did Zhen Yingbu live? No one can say for sure. Zhen Yingbu didn't interact with the people in the town, and he was a loner. If he didn't interact with people, how could he see through the mortal world? Sumo sneered secretly, however. That shouldn't be Zhen Yingbu's first reincarnation. No. Yi Wuhui said, I showed you Zhen Yingbu's portrait. He didn't know anyone in the town. That means that it wasn't Zhen Yingbu's first time in the reincarnation realm. Sumo, could it be that Zhen Yingbu completed the 5 decay and left this place? I don't think so. Sumo said, Zhen Yingbu created the no-return clan. If a reincarnation almighty came out of seclusion, there was no need for him to not show himself. Moreover, no matter if he succeeded or failed, once the 5 decay is over, this town will no longer exist. That means that Zhen Yingbu has been reincarnated in this town? Yi Wuhui said. That's right. Sumo said. Old Man Qiu, how about we stay here tonight? Sumo said. Old Man Qiu was already a little drunk. Of course. Old man, I'm lonely. It's great to have you guys to talk to me. You can stay here for a long time, but you have to take care of your own food. No problem. Sumo smiled. Sumo, what do you plan to do? Yi Wuhui asked secretly. Tonight, we'll search their souls together. Sumo continued to drink with Old Man Chiu, and at the same time, transmitted her voice to Yi Wuhui. If we can't find Jiningbu in such a small enchantment, we'll be a joke. Okay. Yi Wuhui nodded. At this moment, it was getting dark in this small world. Chapter 771. The sky darkened and night fell. The day and night in this spirit formation had been meticulously set. 1 day and 1 night, a total of 12 hours. This was the same as many mortal worlds. After a few rounds of drinking, Old Man Chiu was already dead drunk. It seemed like he was having a good time today. Finally, Sumo helped him back to his room. That big black dog actually followed behind them. So there was a place in Old Man Chiu's room that belonged to it. This old man is really lonely, Yi Wuhui said. A man and a dog, a few decades, a lifetime. Sumo also sighed. As great cultivators, their time was measured in tens of thousands of years. They rarely experienced the pain and suffering of mortals. Thus, the 5 declines in Izong world was to let them better experience the meaning of mortals. If they could understand it, they could become immortals again. If they couldn't, their souls would be destroyed. That in itself was a bet. Humph! The little white pig looked at the black dog, as if he wanted to take a bite out of it. Humph! Don't bully it. Sumo closed the door, then took out an immortal pill from her storage bag, and fed it to the little white pig. Only then did the little white pig calm down a lot. Otherwise, it would always want to have a taste of that black dog. Night fell. Sumo and Yi Wuhui sat in the courtyard. The night sky of Wufan town was actually filled with stars, dazzling and dazzling. Although Sumo and Yi Wuhui only needed to use their magic power to see through everything, at this moment, they were willing to believe that there was a starry sky above their heads. Sitting in the courtyard, they could hear Old Man Chiu's snoring, the laughter of sleepless people, and even the occasional barking of a dog. This night was really quiet. Sumo, actually, the mortal world is really not bad, Yi Wuhui said. Really? Sumo smiled, then shook her head. Maybe it's because we are cultivators, that's why we feel this place is peaceful. Only true mortals know their joys and sorrows. That's just like how almost all mortals envy cultivators' ability to fly in the sky and burrow into the earth. But do you think immortals are free? Sumo smiled bitterly. Mortals have their own pain, and immortals have their own pain. However, if you become an immortal and live in the mortal world, perhaps you really will feel a bit more comfortable. Why? Yi Wuhui asked. Because the pain of the mortal world can be resolved with celestial techniques. Sumo said with a smile. For example, isn't it because you and I are cultivators that we can enjoy sitting here? As for old Chiu, he is already sound asleep. If you and I weren't immortals, how could we be so relaxed? In their mortal lives, most people toiled day and night. The suffering of mortals was no less than that of immortals, and vice versa. We have a sense of control here. Yi Wuhui nodded without saying anything. However, Sumo suddenly thought of Songhai. He believed that Songhai definitely understood what he said. However, Songhai had actually entered the mortal world. Could it be that he really entered the mortal world as an immortal just to enjoy the tranquility and peace? Sumo didn't believe it. He had never had a clue about Songhai entering the mortal world. Today, he suddenly wondered if Songhai had entered another kind of immortal Tao. Soon, it was the middle of the night. At this time, everyone in the town had fallen asleep. In fact, with Sumo's magic power, he could search their souls at any time and place. However, if they were all awake, this kind of soul search might hurt them. Therefore, Sumo chose to do it when they were asleep. Sumo didn't make a seal. because there was no need to use this kind of Dharma spell on mortals. With a thought, his divine sense entered the dreams of everyone in the town. In fact, there were less than 3,000 real mortals in the entire town. Previously, Zhu Butong said that this town had been flourishing for thousands of years. However, there must be a special way to control the population within this barrier. The actual population was not that large. There were not many people, but the years were changing. As for the west and north cities that they mentioned, they actually didn't exist at all. 2,798 people. Sumo's divine sense covered everything. Not to mention that they were all mortals, even the immortal almighty Sumo could search their souls. Therefore, the Dharma spell went very smoothly. Sumo's divine sense was an invisible ghost in the dark night. However, as the search went deeper, Sumo's expression gradually became serious. "What's wrong?" Yi Wuhui looked at Sumo's expression and couldn't help but ask, "Is there no trace of Zheningbu?" "No." Sumo said, "I'll do it again." Then, Sumo searched everyone's divine sense again. However, the result was the same as before. The entire town's memory of Zheningbu was what Yi Wuhui found out today. Some older people still remembered Zhen Ingbu's harshness in the past. The appearance of Zhen Ingbu in their minds was that of a skinny person. When he was young, he was brave and fierce, but when he grew old, he was suspicious and ungrateful. That was completely different from the Zhen Ingbu that Sumo saw back then. Zhen Ingbu's death was a mortal's death. In that life, although Zhen Ingbu experienced many mortal intents, he definitely didn't reach perfection. In theory, Zhen Ingbu should have reincarnated in this town. However, Sumo didn't find any trace of Zhen Ingbu in everyone's divine sense. Could he have forgotten himself? Yi Wuhui said. "That's possible." Sumo frowned and said, "However, I searched everyone's divine sense. Even if he didn't awaken and didn't know who he was during the tribulation. However, his previous memories should have been left in his divine sense. He can forget, but he definitely won't let me search him." "Strange," Yi Wuhui said. "Indeed," Sumo muttered to herself, "a Zhen Ingbu in the 5 decay realm definitely doesn't have the ability to escape from my soul-searching spell. But why can't I find him?" "He left." Yi Wuhui was still suspicious of this. "No." Sumo frowned. "He must still be in this 5 mortal town, and I speculate that this is his last reincarnation. If he doesn't succeed, he will turn into ashes. So, he will put everything on the line." "Then how do we find him?" Yi Wuhui said. "Find the person who appeared after Zhen Ingbu died 30 years ago." Sumo sneered. "Can he really hide in the land of pills?" "Sumo, you're saying that Zhen Ingbu knows we're here and is hiding from us?" Yi Wuhui said. "That's possible," Sumo said. "After all, he is in the 5 decay realm. Once we have evil intentions, he definitely won't be able to escape. So, it's not wrong for him to be careful." In the entire town, there are only 632 people born in the past 30 years. Sumo said. "So few?" Yi Wuhui said. "This town is special." Sumo nodded. "From tomorrow onwards, we will carefully search these 632 people." "Sumo, could it be that Zhen Ingbu will transform into a female?" Yi Wuhui felt a little awkward asking. "He." Sumo shook her head and laughed. "Did you forget about Mu Qingqing?" Chapter 772. Mu Qingqing had yin and yang in her body. Hearing Sumo's words, Yi Wuhui smiled. "I don't think Zhen Ingbu will. How can he be compared to the sword god of the 3 realms? Mu Qingqing has a handsome male body and a beautiful female body." Sumo smiled but didn't say anything. Actually, he also felt that Zhen Ingbu wouldn't transform into a female body. After all, Mu Qingqing's aptitude and talent were second to none in the 3 realms. Zhen Ingbu didn't have that kind of aptitude. Compared to her, Zhen Yingbu could only be considered an ordinary cultivator. They didn't gain anything that night. The next day, Old Man Chiu woke up early. Sumo gave Old Man Chiu some silver fragments, saying that it was for his expenses for the next few days. Old Man Chiu was quite happy and didn't refuse. He said that they would continue drinking tonight. Actually, those silver fragments were just Sumo's illusions. Then, Old Man Chiu went out. However, this time, the big black dog went out with him. It probably felt that the way the little white pig looked at it was a little strange, so it was safer to follow its master. Humph! The little white pig looked at the big black dog and snorted. However, the black dog wagged its tail and went out. Let's go out and take a look too. Those 623 people are enough for us to watch for a day, Sumo said. Then, he and Yi Wuhui went out with the little white pig. Actually, Sumo could also stand in the courtyard and know everything. However, he felt that it was better to go out and take a look. Old Man Chiu didn't go far. It seemed that he was quite popular and could chat with almost everyone he met. Sumo and Yi Wuhui didn't follow Old Man Chiu, but turned into another fork. After all, there were several roads in this town. The 623 people were all within the observation of Sumo and Yi Wuhui. They were all under the age of 30, and there were both men and women. There were slightly more men. The youngest was only 3 years old. In the end, Sumo and Yi Wuhui wandered around the town for an entire day and saw almost all of their target. However, their lives were very ordinary. His daily routine was as usual. This confused Sumo and Yi Wuhui. Indeed, there was nothing abnormal about those people. They were the most ordinary mortals. In the end, Sumo suspected that Zhu Burong was lying, or that Zhen Yingbu was really not here anymore. At dusk, they returned to Mr. Chiu's house. Old Chiu had already prepared the food and wine. 4 dishes, 2 meat dishes and 2 vegetables. You two are back. Old Chiu smiled. Come, have a taste of this old man's cooking. Sumo had a few more drinks with Old Man Chiu. However, Old Man Chiu was a glutton for wine, so he must be drunk. In the end, just like the day before, Suemo sent Old Man Chiu back to his room. In the courtyard, night fell once again. Old Chiu was snoring, sleeping soundly. What should we do? Yi Wuhui's voice was filled with helplessness. They had checked everyone in the town, and Zhen Yingbu was definitely not among them. Ha ha! Sumo smiled bitterly. It seems that we really have to consider going back to the no-return clan tomorrow. Then, we can bring Zhu Burong here and look for him again. I guess that's the only way. Yi Wuhui sighed. Zhu Burong? Sumo sneered. If he lied to us, then the no-return clan will be in trouble. Yi Wuhui said. However, he's not wrong. Zhen Yingbu did exist in this town. However, he only passed away 30 years ago. Didn't Zhen Yingbu say that he was not allowed to take half a step into the town? So, he might not know the situation here, so it can't be considered a lie. No. Sumo suddenly frowned, as if she had thought of something. What's wrong? This is a bit contradictory, Sumo said. Suemo said, according to what Zhu Burong said, he should not have stepped into this small town in the past 1,000 years. But how can he be sure that his master is in the 3 old houses in the west of the town? Yi Wuhui was also surprised. That's right. Unless they had an agreement that even if Zhen Yingbu reincarnated, he would not leave the 3 old houses. Actually, there are many uncertainties in the 5 decrees. I think that Zhen Yingbu should have left himself a backup plan. At least, the place where he went through the heavenly tribulations should be accurate. Otherwise, if there were any accidents, would the no-return clan search for him like us? Sumo's eyes lit up. He felt that he had grasped something. You mean that old Chiu must be Zhen Yingbu? Yi Wuhui said. But, he clearly overlapped with the previous Zhen Yingbu? Moreover, we've checked this old Chiu many times, and there is no memory of Zhen Yingbu in his divine soul. Ha ha! Sumo looked at old Chio's room and couldn't help but smile. Old Chio's divine soul does not have any memory of Zheningbu. But we forgot that there is a living being in these 3 houses. Oh! Yi Wuhui was slightly stunned and then said in surprise, "You mean that black dog?" Haha. Zhu Rong did not say that his master must be human. He only said that his master is in the 3 Realms house in the west of the town. Sumo narrowed his eyes. Isn't there only 1 person and 1 dog in this old house? Humph humph. Go eat that black dog, Sumo said coldly. Humph humph. The little white pig's eyes lit up when he heard that. He seemed to have waited for this moment for a long time. Whoosh, a beam of white light, and the little white pig directly broke through the window and entered. Then, the house instantly lit up with a mysterious light. Humph, roar. Suddenly, the little white pig's voice instantly became louder. Boom, the 3 houses directly exploded. The little white pig actually revealed the true form of the Dracophant soul-devouring beast. Its tall body was like a small mountain, its fangs bared, and its wings were like the wind. And standing opposite it was a cultivator in a red robe. In the ruined house, old Chio and the black dog maintained their original sleeping positions. However, their bodies were glowing with a faint red light. It seemed that they were protected. And the cultivator in red was none other than Zheningbu. However, he was not a real cultivator at the moment. Like Yi Wuhui, he was a soul. Sumo waved one hand. At this moment, the entire courtyard was protected by his dermic powers, forming a boundary within the boundary. Everything that happened here, the small town would not know. Patrol Zhen, long time no see. Sumo looked at Zheningbu and smiled coldly. You have a soul attached to the black dog, you really made it easy for us to find you. Sigh. Zheningbu looked at Sumo and couldn't help but let out a long sigh. Demon King, it has already been 3 million years. Everything that happened back then was done by the demon race. I was also used by others, why do you still need to find me? Sumo shook her head. Patrol Zhen, do you think I'm here to find you for revenge? You really think too much. If I wanted to kill you, I would have done it back then. Your Chen Luo kingdom's past has nothing to do with me. Then why did Demon King come here? Zheningbu asked. I only have one question for you. Sumo narrowed her eyes. In these 3 million years, have you seen Mu Hongqian? I hope you can answer me truthfully, otherwise I will turn you into ashes. Zheningbu raised his eyebrows, then said slowly, I have. Chapter 773. Yes. Zheningbu's words jolted Sumo. When? Sumo said, tell me the details. This? Zheningbu hesitated. His gaze was also somewhat wandering. There were many things he didn't know if he should say. Patrol Zhen. Sumo's gaze turned cold. I don't care what you're worried about, but this is the moment you should be worried about. Whatever I ask, you better tell me everything you know. If you hide anything, or if you lie, I will kill you. Not only will you die, but I will also bury the entire Chen Luo second star with you. You haven't forgotten the great astral tribulation. I don't mind doing it again. Do you believe it? Sumo's tone had become even more awe-inspiring. 3-star Demon King. Sumo was definitely not a kind person. He would definitely do such a thing to find Mu Hongqian. Zheningbu laughed awkwardly. I believe you. Then tell me. Sumo said, you've already wasted 2 days of my time. I can forget about what happened before. But you must tell me everything you know. Zheningbu took a deep breath. It's a long story. After the great astral tribulation, Wu Chongxing and I controlled the Chen Luo second star. My left patrol fleet was almost unscathed, and I was already in the one-lifetime immortal realm, so I was elected as the new sect leader of the Red Dust sect. Not long after, we gathered all our forces and started the Demon Sealing War. At that time, all of us hated the 8th mainland. That kind of hatred was terrifying. We thought that the monster race brought disaster to the Chun Luo 7-star realms. So, we killed all the monster race. However, the monster race on the demon sealing continent was still very powerful. So, that battle was very difficult. Wu Chongxing died in the demon sealing war. The last dozen battleships of the Red Dust sect were also destroyed in the demon sealing war. Fortunately, we won in the end. Then, we purged the Chun Luo 3-star realms several times. Zheningbu smiled bitterly. In the end, there were no monster race on the 3 stars. From now on, the demon sealing continent will no longer have any life. Sumo and Yi Wuhui didn't interrupt Zheningbu. These words could be corroborated with what they had heard before, and they could judge whether Zhen Yingbu was telling the truth. What about Sima Yunyan? Sumo asked deliberately. She is on the 5th planet of Dustnet, now called the Red Dust Star. Back then, when the war was at its peak, she came out of seclusion as a one-era sempiternal realm cultivator. I thought she would help me, but I didn't expect her to refuse. Why did you refuse? Sumo said. Sima Yunyan has always remembered Mu Hongqin's kindness. Zhen Yingbu sighed. Everyone has their own ambitions. I went there 3 times and wasn't invited, so I gave up. So, in a fit of anger, you forbade the cultivators of the mortal world from returning to the 5th and 7th stars. Sumo said. Ha. Zheningbu shook his head. That's for later. The Great Seal War lasted for hundreds of years. Although we've won, we've expended a lot of energy. At first, I only wanted the Red Dust sect to recuperate on the 2nd star and develop slowly. At the same time, I wanted all the cultivators in the sect to focus on cultivation and increase their strength. However, the appearance of a person changed my mind. Mu Hongqin? Sumo said. That's right. Zhen Yingbu nodded. When I saw Mu Hongqin again, it was about 30,000 years after the Great Star Calamity. And the place where we met was this Thousand Clouds Mountain's Thousand Clouds Peak. Was she alone? Sumo asked. Alone. Zhen Yingbu answered. What realm was she in? Was she still wearing that red robe? Sumo asked. Actually, I've seen her twice. Zhen Yingbu frowned. Those 2 times were very different. The first time, she was still wearing a red robe. That was how she looked back then. However, she didn't have the same strong killing intent as before. I'm not sure about her realm, but she's definitely above the reincarnation realm. What did she say to you that time? Sumo asked. At that time, she still remembered me. However, she didn't ask about the Red Dust sect. Zhen Yingbu looked at Sumo with a slightly complicated expression. Instead, she asked about you, the Demon King? What did she ask me? Sumo raised her eyebrows. She asked if you were still in the Chun Luo 3-star realms? Also, what did the Demon King of the 3-star realms look like? Zhen Yingbu's eyes showed a trace of doubt. At that time, I felt that Mu Hongqin's mind was in a mess. Because she seemed to have forgotten some things, and then remembered some strange things. What strange things? Sumo asked. She asked me if I knew where Xiao Huang went. Also, did I know how to get to the Divine Peacock Mountain? In short, her mind was in a mess. Zhen Yingbu said. What happened after that? At the end of the first time we met, she said fiercely that no one from the Red Dust sect was allowed to step into the 5th and 7th stars of the Chun Luo 3-star, or else she would kill everyone. I still remember her gaze, it was very scary. Is that why you forbade the cultivators from the planet of no return from leaving? Sumo said. Yes. At that time, I was already in the middle stage of the immortal realm. However, in front of Mu Hongqin, I couldn't even withstand a single blow. Her aura could imprison me. Zhen Yingbu let out a long sigh. After that, I changed the Red Dust sect, and named it the Sect of No Return. The 3rd star of the Chun Luo 3-star became the planet of no return. In reality, as time passed, there was really nothing left for the 2 stars. What about the second time you met? Sumo frowned. The second time, it was about 30,000 years later. Zheningbu was still frowning. However, this time, she changed a lot. Realm or appearance? Her realm didn't change much. Zheningbu said helplessly, because I couldn't see through her realm. However, she didn't wear her signature red dress, but a green one. Mu Hongqian in green? Sumo raised her eyebrows and waved her hand, forming a mirror image in midair. Is it like this? The mirror image that Sumo summoned was the green Mu Jinghong that she met in the soul storage altar. Of course, it was Wu Er's appearance. Yi Wu Hui had never seen her before. That's it. Zhen Yingbu exclaimed. Demon King, you've seen her before? No. Sumo said again, why did she look for you this time? It's about the past. Zhen Yingbu shook his head. She doesn't seem to remember looking for me that year, and her memory of the great calamity of stars is also very vague. She really wanted to know about Mu Hongqian, and she seemed to have gone to look for Sima Yunyan. At the same time, she asked about you, the Devil Monarch. Yes. Sumo let out a long sigh. His guess was right, Wu Er had indeed awakened. Moreover, she had even asked about him. Then, she left? Sumo asked. Zhen Yingbu pondered for a moment. Actually, she didn't leave by herself. However, I don't know what happened. What do you mean? Because we met in the starry sky. She requested to see me in the name of an old friend in the mortal world. After she asked me everything, she wanted to leave. However, an unforeseen event suddenly occurred. What happened? Sumo narrowed her eyes. A green urn and a lotus suddenly appeared in the starry sky. Zhen Yingbu's eyes were filled with endless fear. Of course, there was also a blue peacock. Chapter 774. Lotus, Green Urn, Blue Peacock. Zhen Yingbu's words caused Sumo's expression to change. I don't know what kind of power it was. Zhen Yingbu's voice was trembling. It seemed like the scene back then had a huge impact on him. But the moment the urn appeared, I felt the same as when I saw the immeasurable ship during the great calamity of the stars. It was something that I could not resist. That green urn is on a white lotus flower. The lotus gave off an extremely strange brilliance. The existence of the lotus made everything around it lose its color. At that moment, I couldn't move at all. I could only watch everything in a daze. I was imprisoned. That blue peacock hovered at the side. It didn't do anything. In my eyes, it was just watching everything indifferently like a witness. Then, that green urn took Mu Hongqian away, right? Sumo interrupted. Yes. Zhen Yingbu nodded. Mu Hongqian struggled a little. But it seemed to me that it was all in vain and of no avail. The green urn's power was unstoppable, and that lotus was even more strange. Was that green urn a treasure of the demon race? Sumo asked. Zhen Yingbu shook his head and laughed bitterly. Demon King, I'm not afraid of you laughing at me. At that time, I only wanted to stay alive. So, I didn't dare to say anything, and I didn't dare to ask anything. Actually, I couldn't say anything, and I couldn't ask anything. At that moment, I was extremely afraid. I was afraid that the green urn would swallow the entire second planet, just like the immeasurable ship back then. Sumo nodded. She could understand Zhen Yingbu's feelings. It seemed like that green urn was at least a lianbua or even of a higher grade. That blue peacock didn't say anything until the end? Sumo asked again. No. Zhen Yingbu said. In the end, a red veil appeared in the void and sealed the green urn. At the same time, a voice came from the void. But that voice didn't belong to the blue peacock. It was like an oracle. I couldn't even tell if it was a man or a woman. What did that voice say? Sumo asked. A small star, a drop in the ocean. Don't ask about other things. Guard your own land. Zhen Yingbu said. Then, the green urn disappeared into the universe. After that, the blue peacock looked at me deeply, as if telling me to take care of myself, and then disappeared. The last thing to disappear was the lotus. From then on, I didn't allow the sect not to return cultivators to leave the planet of no return, and I never saw Mu Hongchen again. Izong Demon Clan did not appear again. For the next 2 million years, everything was peaceful on planet no return. Sumo nodded. Demon King, I, Zheningbu, have lived for 3 million years. My death is not to be regretted. Today, I only hope that the Demon King will spare the lives of my planet of no return on account of our past relationship. Zheningbu's voice was low. I've already lived 5 reincarnation mortal lives. During this period, I know that living is not easy. Perhaps I shouldn't have slaughtered the entire demon-sealing continent. Then, Zheningbu let out a long sigh. In fact, cultivators were also constantly growing. He felt guilty, so he always thought that Sumo would kill him. Sumo looked at Zheningbu and shook his head lightly. Then, he waved his hand and light filled the sky. Everything that was destroyed by the dragon-elephant soul-devouring beast just now started to recover. Come back, Sumo called softly. Hearing this, the dragon-elephant soul-devouring beast shook its body and turned into a little white pig, landing on Sumo's shoulder. Unfortunately, it didn't get to eat dog meat just now. It transformed for nothing. Patrol Jun, go through the tribulation well. If you can become a reincarnation realm cultivator, protect the Chun Luo 3 stars. Sumo said to Zheningbu. Sima Yunyan died 100,000 years ago. She died. Zheningbu was shocked. She didn't go through the 5 declines? She let go of all her desires, so she should be able to go through the tribulation better than me. She didn't want to go through the 5 declines. The great astral tribulation seemed to have made her lose all hope, Sumo said. I'm afraid you're the only cultivator from the Red Dust sect that year, right? Sima Yunyan is dead, so I'm the only one left. Zheningbu nodded with a sad expression. You will succeed. Sumo smiled faintly. Pretend that I never came today. You continue to go through the tribulation, and I'll go find someone else. Don't worry, I won't disturb the Chun Luo 3 stars anymore. Goodbye. With that, Sumo waved at Yi Wuhui. The demonic boat appeared under Sumo's feet. The two of them rode on the demonic boat and disappeared from Wufan town. I'll send off the Demon King on my knees. Zheningbu knelt in the void and his voice trembled slightly, but it was sincere. Sumo's departure seemed to have taken away the last memories of the Chun Luo 3 stars. At that moment, Zheningbu suddenly seemed to understand something. In this life, he had finally reached the peak of the 5 declines. Finally, Zheningbu stepped onto the reincarnation Tao. In the galaxy on the demonic boat, Sumo and Yi Wuhui left planet of no return. Sumo, are we leaving just like that? But we haven't found Sister Wu-er yet. Yi Wuhui asked. She's definitely not in the Chun Luo 3-star realms anymore. Sumo said. Yi Wuhui didn't understand. The blue peacock that Zheningbu saw must be the princess of the peacock race, Xing Luo. But that green urn shouldn't be hers. Also, I've seen that green urn before. That green urn must belong to a lotus warrior. That lotus flower, I think it's the incarnation of that lotus warrior. You've seen that green urn before? Yi Wuhui was shocked. She felt that it was possible that the lotus flower was the incarnation of the lotus warrior, but Sumo had seen that green urn before. Where did you see it? The soul storage altar cave abode. Sumo said slowly, you hadn't been to the soul storage altar cave abode at that time. Previously it was in the front cave. But later, the front cave changed, and the green urn disappeared. Disappeared? How did it disappear? Yi Wuhui continued to ask. Actually, I'm not too sure either. Sumo frowned. Because I hadn't completely awakened at that time. One time, I was refining pills in the stone house in the flower valley at the back of the mountain. By chance, I found a set of mysterious incantations left behind by a woman in red on the wall. In the end, after that set of incantations was used, the front cave of the soul storage altar cave abode underwent an earth-shattering change, which is to say, it became what you saw before. Previously, it had a high platform, a long table, 49 red lanterns, and a large green urn. During that change, I saw with my own eyes that the large urn sealed Senior Sister Mu's soul. Sumo sighed. But I didn't know at that time that she was Wu-er. But who was the woman in red on the wall? Yi Wu-hui said. Previously, I guessed that she was a shadow of Senior Sister Mu. But now that I think about it, it doesn't feel right. Sumo frowned and shook her head. Because, after analyzing it, there are still many unexplainable things. Chapter 775. Tell me the details. Yi Wu-hui said. Take a look at this. Sumo took out the Dust Sieve Sutra from her storage pouch and handed it to Yi Wu-hui. Other than the cultivation method and blank space, there are some words left behind. Some were written by me in the Galaxy era, and some were written by Wu-er later. Unfortunately, most of them are not dated. The handwriting is scattered. It was not written by one person at the same time. Yi Wu-hui opened the Dust Sieve Sutra and read it carefully. He could not help but frown. Sumo, there is no clear mention of anything here. It is just scattered words. Then how did you know that Sister Wu-er was sealed in the Dust Sieve 3 stars? Yi Wu-hui asked. Because when the soul storage altar changed, her divine soul in green said that she would ask the fated person who obtained the Dust Sieve Sutra to come to the Dust Sieve 3 stars to save her. Sumo sighed. Now that I think about it, she did not say that she was sealed in the Dust Sieve 3 stars. Actually, if that green urn was really a Lianhua-level existence, it would not be in the Dust Sieve 3 stars. But it appeared in the soul storage altar. Yi Wu-hui interrupted. Yes. Haha. Sumo laughed self-deprecatingly. At that time, I definitely could not tell that it was a Lianhua. I did not even know what a Lianhua is. Oh. Yi Wu-hui raised his eyebrows as if he thought of something. Sumo, what realm were you in at that time? What realm? Sumo thought for a moment. Divine Tribulation Realm. Divine Tribulation Realm. Yi Wu-hui smiled. The Divine Tribulation Realm of the mortal realm? Yes. Suemo couldn't help but smile. After soul transformation was the Divine Tribulation Realm, and after Divine Tribulation was immortality. Nowadays, the Divine Tribulation Realm seemed to be something extremely distant to them. After all, Sumo was already a reincarnation almighty. Sumo, are you sure that everything you saw back then was real? Yi Wu-hui tilted his head and looked at Sumo. Sumo was stunned. What do you mean? You said earlier that a spell changed everything in the soul storage altar. Yes. And your realm back then was only deity tribulation. That's right. Sumo frowned. What are you trying to say? Yi Wu-hui pondered for a moment and said, I'm thinking, when you first entered the soul-storing altar, could everything you saw be an illusion? Illusion? Sumo was stunned. This was a problem he had never considered before. This soul storage altar is its true form, Yi Wu-hui said. Illusion and true form? Sumo could not help but look at the little white pig. This? However, the little fellow looked at Sumo adorably and then shook its head like a rattle drum. Humph. The little white pig's snort meant, Don't ask me, I don't know anything. Did you also see the green urn at that time? And the writing? Yes, and the corpse of the adult dragon elephant soul eater. Sumo looked at the little white pig and said angrily, Why don't you know anything? Humph humph. This time, the little fellow nodded seriously. Yi Wu-hui picked up the little white pig. Looking at the little fellow's current appearance, It was impossible to believe that it was a ferocious dragon elephant soul eater. Maybe it was also in the illusion, Yi Wuhui said. Otherwise, I feel that the lianbo like the green urn would not have disappeared just because you used a spiritual art. Your Taoist technique should have only broken some of the illusions. Of course, this is just my guess. Sumo nodded. However, I feel that your guess seems to be reasonable. It seems that we have to think about it at length. Maybe we should return to the soul storage altar to take a look. Sumo, do you know who the original owner of the soul storage altar was? I don't know. Sumo shook her head. However, the owner of the soul storage altar must have been someone above the Lotus Knight level. I once suspected that Wu Air had stayed there. However, it's hard to explain in the books now. Yi Wuhui nodded. The world was a mystery. Often, when you solved a mystery, there was another one waiting for you. I wonder how many years have passed since we were brought back to the past by the immeasurable ship? Yi Wuhui sighed faintly. Sumo, are we preparing to go to the Divine Peacock Mountain after we leave the planet of no return? Sumo nodded. However, if we go to the Divine Peacock Mountain, we have to make some preparations. With my current realm, I'm afraid it's not appropriate to go to the Divine Peacock Mountain. You must know that Nine-Tailed Raccoon is at the 5th stage of the Rebirth realm. That Peacock Princess has most likely become a venerable. My strength is definitely not enough in the Prajna realm. It's a pity that I can't help you much. Yi Wuhui carried the little white pig. However, Sumo, you still have Huang Ying in your Qiankuan pouch. He can help you. If you didn't mention it, I would have forgotten about him. Sumo said. When the time is right, I really have to let him out. However, he is also a soul and is currently in a deep sleep. It's time for me to cultivate steadily. After all, I need to advance to the Venerable Realm in 3,000 years. There doesn't seem to be much time left. Sumo smiled. Otherwise, your ancient lotus body will be gone. It doesn't matter even if it's gone. Yi Wuhui smiled slyly. In any case, you can't ignore me. Of course not. Sumo smiled faintly. Actually, even without the immortal bathing ancient lotus, I believe that if I find Bu Miaotian or advance to a Lotus Knight, there will definitely be a way to solve your problem. After all, a Lotus Knight can plant lotuses and create a real world. Unfortunately, my cultivation is too slow. Otherwise, I would be able to solve even more problems. Your cultivation is slow. Yi Wuhui was speechless. One must know that when Yi Wuhui first met Sumo, Sumo was only a deity tribulation. Sumo's cultivation speed could be said to be unparalleled, because, in a sense, Sumo couldn't be considered a complete cultivation. Instead, it was accompanied by a step-by-step awakening. However, all of that still couldn't keep up with his needs. The demonic boat flew fast, and the two of them gradually moved away from the planet of no return. In fact, Sumo was also considering whether she should return to the Pure Land Star Zone to have a look. After all, there were still many Universe Grand Cultivators in Beihan City. If one of those people completely recovered their previous realm, it would be a great help. Therefore, the demonic boat's route was the same as the one they came from. However, Sumo didn't use a space jump. 3 days later, they passed by the red dust planet. Sumo and Yi Wuhui looked into the distance, but they didn't stop. Another 3 days later, they were about to fly out of the dust net 3-star world. However, at this time, Sumo and Yi Wuhui found something strange. Where was the demon sealing continent? That continent was the gateway to the dust net 3-star world. However, when Sumo and Yi Wuhui arrived at the place where they should see the demon sealing continent, they couldn't see it. Huh! Sumo couldn't help but raise her eyebrows. In an instant, her demon eyes opened. 300,000 miles away, the place that should have been the demon sealing continent had completely turned into a black cloud. It was incredible that the entire continent had turned into a cloud. And what shocked Sumo even more was that there was a girl in a red dress sitting cross-legged on the black cloud. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.